I'm pregnant, and the baby is yours. 5 words. That's all it took to shatter Adrian Brooks' carefully rebuilt world. Standing in the glass-walled office of Elena Vaughn, billionaire CEO, untouchable goddess of corporate America, he couldn't breathe. 6 weeks ago, he'd shared one reckless night with a stranger in a darkened bar. Now that stranger sat before him, hands trembling, mascara-stained, looking nothing like the woman who terrified boardrooms. She looked broken. And the secret growing inside her was about to destroy everything they'd both fought so hard to protect. If you want to know how a single night can rewrite 2 lives forever, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights of Vaughn Industries' 42nd floor hummed with the kind of sterile efficiency that made Adrian Brooks feel like an intruder in his own workplace. He'd been summoned, not requested, not invited. Summoned. The email had arrived at 4:47 p.m. on a Wednesday that had felt, until that moment, blessedly unremarkable. Mr. Brooks, Ms. Vaughn requests your presence in her office at 6 p.m. Please arrive promptly. Margaret Hale, Executive Assistant. Adrian had read it 3 times, searching for context that wasn't there. In 2 years of working as a senior data analyst at Vaughn Industries, he'd never once been called to the executive suite. He existed in the comfortable anonymity of the 14th floor, where his team crunched numbers, optimized algorithms, and stayed gratefully invisible to the people who mattered. Elena Vaughn was someone who mattered. She was the youngest self-made billionaire in the country, a woman whose face graced magazine covers with headlines like the Ice Queen of Tech and breaking glass ceilings in stilettos. She was brilliant, ruthless, and utterly untouchable. The kind of person who existed in a different atmosphere than ordinary humans. Adrian had seen her exactly twice in person, once at his initial company orientation, where she delivered a speech about innovation without making eye contact with anyone, and once in an elevator where she'd stood in perfect silence, scrolling through her phone while everyone else held their breath. Now she wanted to see him. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt like ascending into a different universe. The doors opened onto a reception area decorated in shades of cream and steel, where modern art pieces that probably cost more than his annual salary hung on walls of frosted glass. Margaret Hale, a woman in her 50s with silver hair and the bearing of someone who'd seen everything and been impressed by none of it, glanced up from her desk. "Mr. Brooks, you're 3 minutes early." She said it like an observation, not a compliment. "Ms. Vaughn is finishing a call. Please wait." Adrian waited. He straightened his tie, a navy blue one his daughter Lucy had picked out for his birthday, declaring it made him look fancy like the princes in movies. He thought about texting his neighbor, Mrs. Chen, to let her know he might be late picking up Lucy from her apartment, where his 8-year-old was probably elbow-deep in homework and the cookies Mrs. Chen always had waiting. But his hands felt too unsteady to type. What could Elena Vaughn possibly want with him? His mind raced through possibilities. A mistake in the quarterly report his team had submitted? Some error that had cost the company money? But he'd checked everything twice, as he always did. His work was solid. It had to be. He couldn't afford to lose this job. Lucy depended on him. It was just the 2 of them against the world, and he'd be damned if he'd let her down the way his own father had let him down. "Mr. Brooks," Margaret's voice cut through his spiral. "You may go in." The double doors to Elena's office were made of glass, so perfectly transparent they seemed to disappear, creating the illusion of walking into open air. Adrian pushed through and stepped into a space that felt more like a penthouse than an office. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city skyline at dusk, lights beginning to twinkle like fallen stars. The furniture was minimal but clearly expensive. A desk that looked carved from a single piece of dark wood, chairs upholstered in butter-soft leather, abstract sculptures that were probably worth more than his car. And there, behind the desk, stood Elena Vaughn. But not the Elena Vaughn from the magazines. This woman's hair, usually pulled back in a severe bun, fell loose around her shoulders in dark waves. Her makeup, typically flawless, was smudged beneath her eyes as if she'd been crying and tried unsuccessfully to fix it. She wore a silk blouse in deep emerald, but her hands clutched the edge of her desk like it was the only thing keeping her upright. She looked at him, and Adrian saw something he'd never expected to see in Elena Vaughn's eyes. Fear. "Mr. Brooks," she said, And her voice, usually crisp and commanding in the rare video messages that circulated through the company, came out rough, like she'd been screaming or crying or both. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit down." Adrian sat. His heart hammered against his ribs. Elena didn't sit. She paced to the window, her back to him, and wrapped her arms around herself. For a long moment she just stood there, silhouetted against the dying light. When she finally spoke, her voice was so quiet he had to strain to hear it. "Do you remember the company gala? 6 weeks ago?" The gala. Adrian's stomach dropped. He remembered. The Vaughn Industries annual gala was supposed to be a celebration, a chance for employees to mingle, network, feel like they were part of something bigger than spreadsheets and conference calls. Adrian had gone only because his team lead had insisted, making it clear that attendance was strongly encouraged for anyone hoping to advance. So he'd put on his one good suit, kissed Lucy goodnight, promised Mrs. Chen he wouldn't be out too late, and stepped into the glittering ballroom of the Meridian Hotel, feeling like a fish out of water. The room had been packed with people who belonged in that world. Executives in designer suits, managers who spoke the language of corporate power, ambitious climbers who networked like it was an Olympic sport. Adrian had lasted exactly 45 minutes before the weight of his own inadequacy drove him out of the ballroom and into the hotel's dimly lit lounge bar. The bar had been nearly empty, just a bartender polishing glasses and a woman sitting alone at the far end, nursing what looked like whiskey neat. Adrian had taken a seat 3 stools away, ordered a bourbon he couldn't really afford, and tried not to think about how out of place he felt. How everyone at that gala probably had their lives together, while his was held together with duct tape and sheer stubbornness. How he was 32 years old, raising a daughter alone, and still hadn't figured out how to stop feeling like he was failing her every single day. "Rough night?" The woman's voice had startled him. He'd turned to find her watching him with dark eyes that seemed to see too much. She was beautiful in an understated way, sharp features softened by the low lighting, dark hair falling around her face, dressed in a simple black dress that somehow made every other woman in the hotel look overdone. "Something like that," Adrian had replied. "You?" "The worst." She'd smiled, but it hadn't reached her eyes. "I'm hiding." "From?" "Everything." She'd lifted her glass in a mock toast. "What about you? What are you hiding from?" "Expectations I can't meet, a life I can't seem to get right, the usual." She'd laughed, a real laugh this time, unexpected and warm. "That's refreshingly honest." "I'm too tired to lie." Adrian had surprised himself with the admission. There was something about the darkness of the bar, the anonymity of it, that made him feel like he could say anything. Like she was just a stranger he'd never see again, so it didn't matter. "I'm not supposed to be here. At the gala, I mean. I'm just a guy who crunches numbers, but my boss thought it would be good for my career." He'd made air quotes with his fingers. "So here I am, drinking bourbon I can't afford and wishing I was home with my daughter." "You have a daughter?" 8 years old, Lucy. She's the only good thing I've ever done with my life." The woman had studied him for a moment, something shifting in her expression. "You love her. More than anything." "That's rare." Her voice had gone soft, almost wistful. "A man who actually stays." They'd talked for hours after that, about everything and nothing. She never told him her name, and he never asked. It felt safer that way, like they were characters in someone else's story. She'd told him about the pressure of living up to impossible standards, about the loneliness of being surrounded by people who wanted things from you, but never just wanted you. He'd told her about losing his wife Sarah to cancer 3 years earlier, about the way grief had nearly drowned him, about rebuilding a life for Lucy, even when he didn't know how. "My father left when I was 12, Adrian had confessed somewhere around the 3rd bourbon. "Just walked out one day and never came back. No explanation, no goodbye. I used to wonder if it was my fault. If I'd been better, smarter, less of a burden, maybe he would have stayed." "It wasn't your fault." She'd said it with such fierce certainty that he'd almost believed her. "People who leave, that's on them, not you." I promised myself I'd never be him. I'd never be the man who abandons his kid. And you're not. The bartender had eventually kicked them out at closing time. They'd stumbled into the elevator together, still talking, still laughing, the alcohol making everything feel warm and distant and safe. And then He still wasn't sure who'd moved first. They were kissing. Desperate and clumsy and hungry for connection in a way that had nothing to do with attraction and everything to do with loneliness. They'd ended up in a room. He couldn't remember which floor, couldn't remember how they'd gotten there. Just fragments. Her hands in his hair, the taste of whiskey on her lips, the way she'd whispered stay when he'd hesitated, like she needed him to be there as much as he needed not to be alone. By morning, she was gone. Adrian had woken up in rumpled hotel sheets with a splitting headache and a note on the pillow. "Thank you for last night. A friend." He'd gone home, showered, picked up Lucy, and buried the memory as deep as it would go. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. It didn't mean anything. Except now Elena Vaughn was standing in front of him, and he realized with dawning horror exactly who that woman in the bar had been. "Oh my God," he breathed. Elena turned from the window. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face pale. "You remember? I didn't recognize you. The lighting was so dark, and you looked different, and I'd never actually met you before. I'd just seen you from a distance," and he was babbling, words tumbling over each other. That was you." "Yes." She wrapped her arms tighter around herself. "That was me." Adrian's mind reeled. He'd slept with Elena Vaughn. The Elena Vaughn. The woman who owned the company where he worked, who could fire him with a snap of her fingers, who existed in a stratosphere so far above him they might as well be different species. "I'm sorry," he blurted. "I'm so sorry. I never would have. If I'd known who you were, I would never have." "Stop." Her voice cracked. "Please. I didn't call you here so you could apologize for something I wanted just as much as you did." Adrian closed his mouth. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Elena walked back to her desk on unsteady legs. She gripped the edge again, knuckles white, and took a shaky breath. When she looked up at him, tears were streaming down her face. "I'm pregnant," she whispered, "and the baby is yours." The world stopped. Adrian heard the words, but they didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. Pregnant baby. His. That's not possible," he stammered. "We used protection. I remember we were careful. Nothing is 100%. Elena's voice was hollow. "I found out 2 weeks ago. I've been to 3 different doctors. They all confirmed it. I'm 8 weeks along." 8 weeks? 6 weeks since the gala, plus 2 weeks before that when Adrian did the math without wanting to. It lined up. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" His voice came out strangled. "Because I've been trying to figure out what to do." Elena's composure shattered. "Because I didn't know if I could go through with this, and I didn't want to drag you into something I might not. She couldn't finish the sentence. She sank into her chair and put her head in her hands. "I don't know what I'm doing." Adrian sat frozen. His brain screamed at him to run, to get out of this office and this building and this impossible situation. But something else, something deeper, kept him rooted in place. He looked at Elena Vaughn, billionaire, CEO, untouchable goddess, and saw someone just as terrified as he'd been 3 years ago when Sarah died and left him alone with a 5-year-old and no idea how to be both parents at once. She wasn't untouchable. She was just a person, a scared person who'd made the same mistake he had. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. Elena looked up, mascara streaking her cheeks. "What? What do you want to do? With the baby? With this?" "I don't know." Her voice broke. "I'm 30 years old. I built this company from nothing. I have a life that doesn't have room for. I never wanted." She trailed off, shaking her head. "But I can't stop thinking about it. About them. About what they might be." Adrian's throat tightened. He knew that feeling. That terrifying moment when a life that wasn't yet real suddenly became the most real thing in the world. "I haven't decided anything," Elena continued, "but I thought you deserved to know. You have a right to know. And if I do this, I won't ask you for anything. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. I don't need child support. I don't need you to be involved. I just needed you to know the truth." She was giving him an out, a clean exit. She was telling him he could walk away, no strings attached, no consequences. Just like his father had walked away from him. Adrian thought about 12-year-old him, standing in the doorway of his childhood home, watching his father's car disappear down the street. Thought about the years of wondering if he'd been worth staying for. Thought about the promise he'd made to himself. I will never be that man. He thought about Lucy, asleep in their apartment, trusting him to be there when she woke up, to always be there, because that's what fathers did. They stayed. And somewhere inside Elena Vaughn, whether she kept this pregnancy or not, there was a possibility, a potential person who might one day wonder if their father had wanted them. Adrian couldn't control what Elena decided, but he could control who he was. I won't disappear, he heard himself say. Elena blinked. What? I won't disappear. Adrian's voice grew stronger. If you decide to have this baby, I won't run. I'll be there. I don't know what that looks like yet, and I don't know how we figure this out, but I won't abandon my child. I can't. You don't have to. Yes, I do. He leaned forward, holding her gaze. My father left me when I was 12, just walked out, and I spent my whole life wondering if I wasn't good enough to make him stay. I swore I'd never do that to a kid. So if this baby exists, they deserve to know their father wanted them. Even if everything else is complicated. Even if we barely know each other, they deserve that much. Elena stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Tears spilled down her cheeks faster now, and she didn't bother to wipe them away. You're serious, she whispered. Yes. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. Adrian's chest felt tight. And because I know what it's like to grow up thinking you weren't worth staying for. I won't do that to another kid. For a long moment, Elena just looked at him. Really looked at him, like she was trying to see inside his skull, to figure out if he was real or just another person saying pretty words they didn't mean. Finally, she nodded. Small. Tentative. Okay. 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 She took a shaky breath. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if I can do this, but okay. Thank you for not running. Thank you for telling me. They sat in silence as the city lights grew brighter outside the window. Two strangers connected by a single reckless night and a future neither of them had planned. Adrian's phone buzzed, a text from Mrs. Chen. Lucy is asking when you'll be home. I told her soon. She wants to show you her spelling test. She got 100%. He smiled despite everything. I need to go. My daughter, of course. Elena stood quickly, wiping at her face. I'm sorry for keeping you. I needed you to know. Adrian stood too. At the door, he hesitated. Can I ask you something? Yes. That night at the bar, were you really hiding from everything? Elena's expression softened. Yes. I was supposed to give a speech at the gala, stand up in front of hundreds of people and pretend I have all the answers. Pretend I'm not terrified every single day that I'm not good enough, not smart enough, not strong enough to be who everyone thinks I am. She laughed bitterly. So I hid in a bar and talked to a stranger who felt like the first real person I'd met in years. You were real to me too, Adrian said quietly. That night, you were the first person since Sarah died who made me feel like it was okay not to have everything figured out. Elena's eyes glistened. We're a mess, aren't we? Completely. What are we going to do? Adrian thought about Lucy waiting at home, about the impossibility of the situation, about Elena standing in front of him looking small and scared and nothing like the ice queen everyone thought she was. I guess we figure it out, he said, one day at a time. Elena nodded. One day at a time. Adrian walked out of Vaughn Industries into the cool evening air, feeling like he'd stepped off a cliff and was still waiting to hit the ground. His hands shook as he unlocked his car. His mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, none of them coherent. Elena Vaughn was pregnant. With his baby. His baby. The enormity of it crashed over him in waves. He gripped the steering wheel and forced himself to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The way Sarah had taught him during panic attacks after her diagnosis, when the world felt too big and too heavy and too impossible to survive. You can do hard things, she'd told him. We both can. One breath at a time. He started the car and drove home on autopilot, his mind a million miles away. The apartment building where he and Lucy lived was nothing like the gleaming tower of Vaughn Industries. It was old, a little run down, with water stains on the ceiling and a radiator that clanked like a dying animal. But it was home. He'd painted Lucy's room pink with clouds on the ceiling. He'd hung photos of Sarah on every wall so Lucy would never forget her mother's smile. He'd built a life here from scraps and stubbornness, now that life felt like it was built on sand. Mrs. Chen opened her door before he could knock, Lucy already in her pajamas and clutching her spelling test like a trophy. "Daddy!" She launched herself at him, and Adrian caught her on instinct, burying his face in her hair. She smelled like the strawberry shampoo she loved and the cookies Mrs. Chen always snuck her. "Hey, Bug, I heard you aced your test." 100%. Lucy shoved the paper at him. "Mrs. Morrison said I'm the best speller in the whole class." "That's my girl." Adrian studied the test, forcing himself to focus on the careful letters, the gold star at the top. "I'm so proud of you." "Are you okay, Daddy?" Lucy's face scrunched with concern. "You look sad." Adrian's heart clenched. His daughter was 8 years old and already too perceptive for her own good. She'd learned to read his moods after Sarah died when he'd tried so hard to be strong for her and failed more often than he succeeded. "I'm okay," he lied. "Just a long day at work." "Did your boss yell at you?" "No, nothing like that." "Good, because you're the best and anyone who yells at you is a meanie." Lucy hugged him fiercely. "Can we watch a movie before bed?" "Sure, Bug, whatever you want." He thanked Mrs. Chen, who waved him off with the knowing look of a woman who'd raised 4 kids of her own and could spot parental distress from a mile away. Back in their apartment, Adrian set Lucy up with her favorite movie, some animated thing about talking animals that she'd seen 100 times, and sat beside her on the couch, trying to quiet the storm in his head. Elena's words echoed endlessly. "I'm pregnant, and the baby is yours." How was he supposed to tell Lucy? How was he supposed to explain this to anyone? His coworkers would lose their minds. The gossip alone would be nuclear. And his daughter, God, his sweet, innocent daughter who'd already lost her mother, what would this do to her world? "Daddy, you're not watching." Lucy poked his arm. "Sorry, Bug, just thinking." "About what?" Adrian looked down at his daughter's upturned face, so trusting, so sure that he had all the answers. He thought about the baby growing inside Elena, about the promise he'd made not to run. "About how much I love you," he said, pulling her close, "and how lucky I am to be your dad." Lucy beamed. "I love you too, Daddy. You're my favorite person in the whole world." Adrian held her tighter and tried not to think about how much that world was about to change. The next 3 weeks passed in a surreal blur. Adrian went through the motions at work, trying to act normal while his entire life tilted sideways. He avoided the 14th floor break room where gossip flourished. He kept his head down and his mouth shut. Elena texted him twice. Short, clinical messages. First prenatal appointment scheduled for next Tuesday, 2 p.m. You're welcome to attend if you'd like. E. And then, doctor confirmed everything looks healthy. Still processing. E. He'd responded, I'd like to attend, and I'm glad you're okay. The appointment was at a private clinic in a part of the city where even the air felt expensive. Adrian showed up 10 minutes early, dressed in his work clothes, feeling wildly out of place among the tasteful artwork and hushed voices. Elena arrived exactly on time, wearing oversized sunglasses and a coat that probably cost more than his rent. She looked around nervously, and Adrian realized she was checking to see if anyone recognized her. Hey, he said softly. She jumped. Oh, hi. I didn't see you. Disguise working then. A tiny smile flickered across her face before disappearing. I don't want this showing up on some gossip site before I'm ready to deal with it. I get it. They sat in uncomfortable silence until a nurse called Elena's name. The doctor, a calm woman in her 50s named Dr. Patel, greeted them warmly and didn't bat an eye at the tension between them. So, Ms. Vaughn, Mr. Brooks, let's take a look at how your baby is doing. Your baby. The words hit Adrian like a freight train. Elena lay back on the examination table, lifting her shirt to expose her still flat stomach. Dr. Patel squeezed gel onto her skin and pressed the ultrasound wand against her abdomen. The monitor flickered to life with grainy black and white images that meant nothing to Adrian. Then he heard it, a rapid, rhythmic whooshing sound, fast and strong and undeniably alive. "There's the heartbeat," Dr. Patel said, smiling. "Nice and steady, about 160 beats per minute, which is perfect for this stage." Adrian couldn't breathe. He stared at the monitor, at the tiny blob of white in the center of all that darkness. It didn't look like a baby. It looked like a bean, but it had a heartbeat. It was real. He glanced at Elena and found her staring at the screen with an expression he couldn't quite read. Her hand gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. "Everything looks very healthy," Dr. Patel continued. "Due date is approximately April 18th. We'll do more detailed scans as you progress, but for now, things are developing right on track." April. 6.5 months from now. Suddenly, 6.5 months felt like no time at all. After the appointment, Adrian and Elena stood outside the clinic in awkward silence. She'd taken off the sunglasses, and he could see the strain in her eyes. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I don't know." Elena's voice was barely above a whisper. Hearing the heartbeat made it real. Before, it was just an idea, a problem to solve, but now it's a person. "Yeah." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I don't know if I can do this, Adrian. I don't know if I'm capable of being what a child needs." "Why not?" She laughed bitterly. "Look at my life. I work 80 hours a week. I built an empire on being ruthless and making hard calls. I fire people without blinking. I crush competitors. I don't have time for PTA meetings or soccer games or whatever parents are supposed to do." "Neither did I," Adrian said quietly. "When Sarah died, I had no idea how to raise Lucy alone. I couldn't cook anything except cereal. I cried every night after she went to bed because I was so terrified of screwing her up. But you figure it out because you have to." "You had love," Elena countered. "You loved your wife. You love your daughter. I don't even know what that looks like." Adrian studied her, really looked at her. Behind the designer clothes and the billionaire veneer, he saw the same woman who'd sat in that dark bar 6 weeks ago, talking about the loneliness of being surrounded by people who wanted things from you but never just wanted you. "You're scared," he said. "Terrified." "So am I." He took a breath. "But we don't have to figure everything out today. We just have to show up. One appointment at a time, one day at a time." Elena looked at him with something like wonder. "Why aren't you running?" "You could. I gave you permission. Why are you still here?" "Because I promised I wouldn't disappear." Adrian met her gaze steadily. "And I keep my promises." For the first time since that night in the bar, Elena smiled. A real smile. Small and fragile and genuine. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For being here. For not making this harder than it already is." They stood together in the fading afternoon light, two people bound by biology and circumstance, trying to find their footing in a situation neither had planned. And for the first time, Adrian felt the faintest flicker of something that might, eventually, become hope. The weeks that followed the ultrasound appointment settled into a strange rhythm that felt both surreal and oddly natural. Adrian found himself existing in two separate worlds that never quite touched. In one world, he was just dad, making breakfast for Lucy, helping with homework, reading bedtime stories, maintaining the carefully constructed routine that kept their small life running smoothly. In the other world, he was the father of Elena Vaughn's unborn child, navigating a situation so far outside his experience it might as well have been happening to someone else. The secrecy was the hardest part. He couldn't tell anyone, not his coworkers, who would have crucified him with gossip, not Mrs. Chen, despite her knowing eyes that seemed to see through every lie he told about working late, and definitely not Lucy, who was too young to understand the complexity of what was happening and too perceptive not to sense that something had changed. Elena texted him updates every few days. Brief, clinical messages that felt like dispatches from another planet. "Morning sickness is brutal, can't keep anything down." He found a maternity store that delivers discreetly. The future is weird. Next appointment, November 12th. Anatomy scan. "They'll tell us the sex if we want to know. Do you want to know?" Adrian had stared at that last message for 20 minutes before responding, "I think so. But it's your call." Her reply came hours later. "Let's find out together." The anatomy scan appointment fell on a Tuesday, which meant Adrian had to take a half day off work and concoct an elaborate lie about a dental emergency. His team lead had given him a suspicious look but didn't push. Adrian was a model employee, punctual, reliable, never caused problems. One afternoon off wouldn't raise red flags. The clinic waiting room was nearly empty when he arrived. Just an older couple, holding hands, both of them beaming with the kind of joy that came from planned pregnancies and stable marriages. Adrian felt like an imposter sitting among them with his secondhand jacket and the weight of his secrets. Elena arrived 15 minutes late, breathless and flustered in a way he'd never seen her. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wore jeans and an oversized sweater instead of her usual designer armor. "Sorry," she gasped, sinking into the chair beside him. "Back-to-back meetings ran over, and traffic was a nightmare, and I couldn't exactly tell my assistant why I needed to leave early." "It's okay. We still have time." Elena pressed her hand to her stomach, and Adrian noticed for the first time the small but unmistakable swell beneath her sweater. She caught him looking, and her cheeks flushed. "It's getting harder to hide," she said quietly. "I've been wearing loose clothes and avoiding certain angles, but people are starting to notice. Last week, my COO asked if I'd changed my workout routine because I looked different. I nearly had a heart attack." "What did you tell him?" "That I'd started yoga." She laughed without humor. "I've never done yoga in my life." "Elena Vaughn," the nurse called before Adrian could respond. The examination room was identical to the one from their first appointment. Same machine, same sterile smell, same sense of unreality that washed over Adrian every time he stepped into this space. Dr. Patel greeted them with her usual warm professionalism, though Adrian thought he saw a flicker of curiosity in her eyes as she glanced between them. "How are you feeling, Ms. Vaughn?" she asked, pulling up Elena's chart on the computer. "Exhausted, nauseous, like my body doesn't belong to me anymore." Elena's voice was flat. "Is that normal?" "Completely normal for 20 weeks. The fatigue should start improving soon, though. And the nausea typically eases up in the second trimester, though some women experience it throughout." Dr. Patel smiled gently. "You're halfway there. That's a big milestone." Halfway there, 20 weeks down, 20 to go. The math made Adrian's head spin. Elena settled onto the examination table, and Dr. Patel began the scan. The monitor flickered to life, showing images that were far more detailed than the grainy blob from their first appointment. Adrian could make out a head, arms, legs, an actual tiny human shape. "There we go," Dr. Patel murmured, moving the wand across Elena's stomach. "Beautiful. Let's check all the measurements." She walked them through the scan with practiced narration. The brain looked good. The heart had 4 chambers, all functioning properly. The kidneys, the spine, the limbs, everything was developing exactly as it should. Adrian tried to follow along, but his eyes kept drifting to Elena's face. She was staring at the monitor with an expression he couldn't quite read, not quite fear, not quite wonder. Something caught between the two. "Everything looks perfect," Dr. Patel said finally. "You have a very healthy baby." She paused. "Would you like to know the sex?" Elena's hand found Adrian's. Her fingers were ice cold. "Yes," she whispered. Dr. Patel moved the wand to a different angle, studied the screen, then smiled. "Congratulations. You're having a girl." "A girl." The room tilted sideways. Adrian gripped Elena's hand tighter, feeling her pulse racing against his palm. A daughter. He was going to have another daughter. "Are you sure?" Elena's voice came out strangled. "Very sure, see right here." Dr. Patel pointed to the screen. "That's definitely a girl." Elena made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Tears streamed down her face, and she didn't bother wiping them away. "A girl," she breathed. "I'm having a girl." Dr. Patel printed out several photos and tactfully excused herself to let them process. The moment the door closed, Elena broke down completely. Great, heaving sobs that shook her whole body. Adrian stood frozen for a moment, unsure what to do. Then instinct took over. He wrapped his arms around her and held on while she cried into his shoulder. "I'm sorry," she gasped between sobs. "I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm—" You don't have to apologize. I didn't think I'd feel like this. I thought I'd be clinical about it, detached, but hearing that it's a girl, seeing her on the screen, knowing she's real and growing, and her voice broke. I'm terrified, Adrian. What if I ruin her? What if I'm as bad at this as I think I'm going to be? Adrian pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. You won't ruin her. You're already worried about being a good mother. That's what good mothers do. You don't know that. Yes, I do. He squeezed her shoulders gently. Sarah used to say the same thing when Lucy was born. She was convinced she'd mess everything up, but she loved Lucy so much that she figured it out. And you will too. Elena searched his face like she was looking for proof that he wasn't lying. Finally, she nodded and pulled away, wiping at her eyes with shaking hands. A girl, she said again, softer this time. A tiny smile flickered across her tear-stained face. I never let myself imagine it before, what they'd be like. But now I can't stop thinking about her, about who she'll become. Me neither, Adrian admitted. They left the clinic together, standing awkwardly in the parking lot as the afternoon sun slanted across the pavement. Elena clutched the ultrasound photos like they were made of glass. Can I ask you something? She said suddenly. Of course. What's it like? Being a parent, the day-to-day reality of it. Adrian thought about Lucy's sticky fingers at breakfast, the way she demanded the same bedtime story 3 nights in a row, her gap-toothed grin when she brought home perfect spelling tests. He thought about the exhaustion and the fear and the moments of pure, overwhelming love that made everything else worth it. It's terrifying, he said honestly, and beautiful, and harder than anything you've ever done. But also, it's the most important thing. Nothing I've ever accomplished at work matters even a fraction as much as being Lucy's dad. Elena absorbed this in silence. I've spent my entire life building Vaughn Industries. I've sacrificed everything for it. Relationships, sleep, any chance at a normal life. And now I'm supposed to just… what? Step back, choose something else? Not step back, but maybe make room. Adrian hesitated. You don't have to have all the answers right now. You've got 4.5 months to figure it out. To 4.5 months, Elena echoed. That feels like forever and no time at all. They stood together in the fading light, 2 people still figuring out how to exist in the same story. Before they parted ways, Elena grabbed his arm. Thank you, she said, for being there, for not making me feel crazy for being scared. You're not crazy, you're human. Elena's smile was small but genuine. That's a new one. Most people think I'm a robot. They don't know you. Neither do you. Not really. Adrian thought about the woman he'd met in the bar, pouring out her loneliness to a stranger. I think I know you better than you realize. Something shifted in Elena's expression. For just a moment the walls came down and he saw the person underneath, fragile and fierce and fighting like hell to keep it together. I should go, she said finally. I have a board meeting at 5 that I can't miss. And I need to pick up Lucy. They parted with the awkwardness of people who shared something profound but didn't quite know how to acknowledge it yet. Adrian drove home with the ultrasound photos burning a hole in his pocket, wondering how long he could keep this secret before it consumed him. Lucy was waiting on Mrs. Chen's couch when he arrived, watching cartoons and eating apple slices. She launched herself at him the moment he walked through the door. Daddy, you're late. I know, Bug. Sorry, work stuff. Mrs. Chen said you had to go to the dentist. Did they hurt your teeth? Adrian shot Mrs. Chen a grateful look. Nope, all good. Just a checkup. Back in their apartment, Lucy chattered about her day while Adrian made dinner. Spaghetti with marinara sauce from a jar, garlic bread from the freezer. Nothing fancy, but Lucy devoured it like it was a 5-star meal. Watching her, Adrian felt a pang of something he couldn't quite name. How was he supposed to tell her that everything was about to change? That soon she'd have a sister? That their quiet little life was about to explode? Daddy, you're being weird, Lucy announced, pointing her fork at him. You keep staring at me. Can I look at my favorite person? Not like that. You look sad. Adrian's chest tightened. I'm not sad, Bug, just thinking. About Mommy? The question hit him like a punch. Lucy asked about Sarah less frequently now, but when she did, it always caught him off guard. Yeah, sometimes I think about her. Do you think she misses us? I think if there's a heaven, she's watching over you every day, and she's so proud of how smart and brave you've become. Lucy considered this seriously. I wish she was here. Me too, baby. Me too. That night, after Lucy fell asleep clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit, Adrian sat alone in the living room with the ultrasound photos spread across the coffee table. He stared at the grainy image of his daughter, this tiny person who didn't know she existed yet, but was already changing everything. He thought about Elena, probably sitting in some boardroom right now, pretending everything was normal while her whole world shifted beneath her feet. He thought about the promise he'd made not to disappear, about what it would mean to be a father to two daughters in two completely different worlds. His phone buzzed. A text from Elena. I can't stop looking at the photos. Is that normal? Adrian smiled despite himself and typed back, completely normal. Her response came quickly. I've been in meetings for 3 hours and haven't heard a word anyone said. All I can think about is her. That's called being a mom. A long pause. Then, I don't know how to be a mom and still be me. Adrian stared at his phone, trying to find words that wouldn't sound empty. Finally, he wrote, You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be there. Another pause. You really believe that? I have to. It's the only way I get through each day with Lucy. You're a good father, Adrian. She's lucky to have you. Something warm unfurled in Adrian's chest. And our daughter will be lucky to have you. The words felt monumental, seeing them typed out like that. Our daughter. Not Elena's baby. Not an abstract situation. Their daughter. A real person who would exist in the world in less than 5 months. I hope you're right, Elena wrote back. Good night, Adrian. Good night. Adrian set his phone down and looked again at the ultrasound photos. At the tiny profile, the curve of a nose, the delicate fingers. This was real. This was happening. And somehow, impossibly, he and Elena were going to have to figure out how to make it work. The following weeks brought a shift in their dynamic. They texted more frequently, still mostly about practical things like doctor appointments and medical updates, but occasionally something more personal would slip through. Elena would send him a photo of a ridiculous maternity dress someone had tried to sell her. He'd send her a picture of Lucy's latest artwork, small windows into each other's lives. They met for coffee twice, awkward sit-downs in quiet cafes where they were unlikely to be recognized. The first time, Elena had worn a baseball cap and sunglasses like she was in witness protection. The second time, she'd relaxed enough to just be herself. I told my assistant I need Tuesdays blocked for personal appointments, she said, stirring sugar into her decaf coffee. She looked at me like I'd grown a second head. I haven't taken a personal appointment in 6 years. What did she say? Nothing. She just put it in the calendar and moved on. But I could see her trying to figure out what was going on. People are starting to notice I'm different. Softer, maybe. Or distracted. I don't know. Adrian watched her hands move, noticing the slight tremor in her fingers. Are you sleeping? Not really. Every time I close my eyes, I start thinking about everything that could go wrong. Medical complications, the board finding out before I'm ready, the press getting wind of it. She laughed bitterly. And then I think about her, about holding her, and I'm terrified I won't know what to do. Nobody knows what to do at first. You just do it. Easy for you to say. You've already done this. And I barely survived it, Adrian said honestly. The first 3 months after Lucy was born, Sarah and I were zombies. We had no idea what we were doing. Lucy cried for hours, and we'd try everything, feeding, changing, rocking, singing, and nothing worked. I remember one night at 2 a.m, I was so exhausted I actually cried harder than the baby. Elena's lips quirked into a small smile. Really? Really? Parenting is 90% improvisation and 10% luck, but you figure it out because you have to, because they're depending on you. That's what scares me the most, the depending part. Elena's voice went quiet. I've never had anyone depend on me for anything that mattered. Business, yes. Money, yes. But not love. Not the kind of thing where if I fail, I break someone. Adrian wanted to reach across the table and take her hand, but something held him back. They weren't there yet. Maybe they'd never be there. You won't break her. You're stronger than you think. I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm one bad day away from falling apart. That's parenthood in a nutshell. They sat in comfortable silence after that, sipping their coffee and watching the city move around them. For the first time since the night at the bar, Adrian felt like they might actually be able to do this. Not easily, not perfectly, but together, in whatever messy form that took. At home that evening, Lucy cornered him while he was washing dishes. "Daddy, are you keeping a secret?" Adrian nearly dropped the plate he was holding. "What? Why would you think that?" "Because you keep looking at your phone and smiling, and you've been going out a lot, and you seem happy but also worried. That's what you look like when you have a secret." Adrian stared at his 8-year-old daughter, wondering when she'd become so observant. "I'm not keeping a secret, Bug. Work's just been busy." "You're lying." Lucy crossed her arms. "You always bite your lip when you lie." Damn. She was right. Adrian consciously unclenched his jaw. "Some things are complicated, Lucy. Adult things. It doesn't mean I'm keeping secrets from you. It just means there are some things I need to figure out before I can explain them." Lucy studied him with Sarah's eyes, sharp and knowing and impossible to fool. "Does it have to do with a girl?" Adrian's heart stopped. "Why would you say that?" "Because Mrs. Chen said you've been acting like her son did when he met his wife. All nervous and smiley and distracted." Lucy tilted her head. "Do you have a girlfriend?" "No, I don't have a girlfriend." "But there's a girl?" "It's complicated. Adults always say that when they don't want to tell the truth." Lucy's expression softened. "It's okay if you like someone, Daddy. Mommy would want you to be happy." The words hit Adrian like a freight train. He knelt down so they were eye to eye. "I know, Bug, and I promise, when there's something to tell you, you'll be the first to know. Okay?" Lucy considered this, then nodded. "Okay, but I'm watching you." "I know you are." That night, after Lucy was asleep, Adrian sat on his bed with his phone in his hand, staring at the message thread with Elena. He thought about what Lucy had said, about secrets and truth and the weight of both. He started typing. "Lucy asked me if I was keeping a secret." Elena's response came almost immediately. "What did you tell her? That some things are complicated. She didn't buy it. She's too smart. She sounds like an amazing kid." "She is. She's the best thing in my life." A long pause. Then, "Do you think she'll hate me when she finds out?" Adrian's chest tightened. "She won't hate you. She might be confused at first, but Lucy has the biggest heart of anyone I know. She'll come around." "I hope you're right. I keep thinking about her, about what she'll think of me. If she'll see me as someone taking her father away." "You're not taking me away. I'll always be her dad first. Nothing changes that." "Everything changes that," Elena wrote back. "We both know it. Your life is about to get infinitely more complicated." "I know, but some things are worth the complication." Another pause. "You're a better person than I am, Adrian." "No. I'm just someone who's already learned how much you can survive. You'll learn it too." The conversation faded after that, but Adrian lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling and wondering how much longer they could keep this secret before it exploded. The answer came sooner than he expected. 3 days later, Adrian was at his desk reviewing a spreadsheet when his phone rang. Elena's name flashed on the screen. She never called during work hours. His stomach dropped. "Hello?" "Adrian," her voice was shaking. "I need you to come to my office, now." "What's wrong? Is the baby—" "The baby's fine. It's not that. Just, please, come now." She hung up before he could respond. Adrian grabbed his jacket and took the elevator to the 42nd floor, his mind racing through every possible disaster. When he reached Elena's office, he found her standing at the window, her back to the door, shoulders rigid with tension. "Elena?" She turned, and he saw her face was pale, her eyes red-rimmed. In her hand was a folder. "My mother knows," she said flatly. "About the baby. About you. About everything." The floor dropped out from under him. "How?" "She has people. Investigators. She's always kept tabs on me, but I didn't think—" Elena's voice broke. "She showed up at my apartment this morning with a complete dossier, photos of us at the clinic, records from the doctor's office, everything." "What did she say?" Elena's laugh was bitter and sharp. What do you think she said? That I'm throwing my life away, that you're using me for money, that I need to end this before it destroys everything I've built. Her hands shook as she held up the folder. She brought you a check, Adrian. She wants me to give it to you so you'll disappear. Adrian's blood turned to ice. What? $2 million. That's apparently what my mother thinks it costs to make you go away. Elena's voice dripped with disgust. She told me I could still fix this, that I could make it all go away quietly and no one would ever have to know. Adrian couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. $2 million. An amount of money he couldn't even conceptualize. Enough to change Lucy's entire life. To pay for college, buy a house, never worry about bills again. Elena was watching him, and he realized with a jolt that she was waiting to see what he'd say, waiting to see if he'd take it. No, he said. What? No, I don't want the money. I don't want any of it. Adrian's voice came out stronger than he felt. Your mother doesn't get to buy me off like I'm some problem to be solved, and neither you nor our daughter is for sale. Elena's eyes filled with tears. You're serious? Completely. Adrian stepped closer. I told you I wouldn't disappear. I meant it. Not for $2 million. Not for any amount of money. I'm not my father, and I'm not the kind of man who can be bought. She said you'd say that at first? Elena's voice was small. She said every man has a price, that you'd take the money eventually. Then she doesn't know me. They stood facing each other in the late afternoon light, the city sprawling beneath them. Elena looked like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, trying to decide whether to jump or step back. My mother wants to meet you, she said finally. She's waiting downstairs in the lobby. She said if you refused the check, she wanted to look you in the eye and see what kind of man would trap her daughter. Adrian's jaw clenched. I didn't trap anyone. I know, but she doesn't believe that. Elena took a shaky breath. You don't have to meet her. I can tell her to leave. But if you do meet her, you need to know what you're walking into. My mother is... She's not like other people. She's cold, calculating. She'll try to break you. Let her try. Elena searched his face. Why are you doing this? You could take the money and run. Start over somewhere else. Give Lucy everything she's ever wanted. Because Lucy doesn't need money. She needs a father who keeps his promises. Adrian met Elena's gaze steadily. And our daughter deserves a father who wanted her, who chose to stay even when it was hard. Something crumbled in Elena's expression. She crossed the distance between them and wrapped her arms around him, burying her face in his chest. Adrian held her, feeling her shake with silent sobs. I'm so tired of being alone, she whispered. I'm so tired of people wanting things from me instead of just wanting me. I'm not going anywhere, Adrian said into her hair. I promise. They stood like that until Elena pulled herself together, wiping her eyes and straightening her spine. The vulnerable woman disappeared, replaced by the CEO armor she wore to face the world. Let's go meet my mother, she said. And Adrian? Whatever she says, whatever she does, don't let her make you feel small. You're worth 100 of her. They rode the elevator down in tense silence. When the doors opened to the lobby, Adrian saw her immediately. Victoria Vaughn sat in one of the leather chairs near the entrance, perfectly poised in a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than Adrian's car. She was in her late 50s, with sharp features and ice-blue eyes that missed nothing. When she saw them approaching, she stood with the kind of grace that came from decades of finishing schools and country clubs. Elena, she said, her voice smooth as silk and twice as cold. And this must be Mr. Brooks. Mother, Elena's voice was equally glacial. I believe Adrian has something to say to you. Victoria turned her attention to Adrian, and he felt the full weight of her judgment. She looked him up and down, taking in his off-the-rack suit, his worn shoes, his calloused hands, and he could practically see her tallying up everything he wasn't. Wealthy, connected, worthy of her daughter. Mr. Brooks, she said, I assume Elena gave you my offer. She did. And? Adrian held her gaze without flinching. And the answer is no. I don't want your money. I want to be there for my daughter. Victoria's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. How noble. And when the reality of raising a child sets in, when you realize what it costs, not just financially but emotionally, will you still be so principled? Yes. You say that now. But I've seen men like you before. Men who make grand promises and disappear the moment things get difficult. Then you haven't met men like me. Adrian's voice was steady. Because I've already raised one daughter through the hardest thing imaginable. I've already survived losing my wife and figuring out how to be both parents to a 5-year-old. I know what difficult looks like. And I'm still here. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Elena deserves better than this. Better than you. Maybe, but Elena deserves a choice, and so does our daughter. Adrian stepped closer. You don't get to decide who's worth staying for. That's not your call to make. For the first time, Victoria's composure cracked, just a fraction. Her jaw tightened and she glanced at Elena, who was watching the exchange with an unreadable expression. You're making a mistake, Victoria said, directing the words at her daughter now. Both of you. This will end badly. That's my decision to make, Elena said quietly. Not yours. Victoria's lips pressed into a thin line. She picked up her purse, an elegant thing that probably cost more than Adrian's rent, and gave them both one final, withering look. When this falls apart, she said, don't come crying to me. She walked out of the lobby without another word, leaving a wake of expensive perfume and frigid disapproval. Adrian exhaled slowly, realizing he'd been holding his breath. Beside him, Elena was trembling. That went well, she said with a shaky laugh. Your mother is terrifying. She's been training for that role her entire life. Elena rubbed her temples. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Don't apologize. You warned me. Adrian glanced at her. Are you okay? No, but I will be. She straightened her shoulders. Thank you for not taking the money, for standing up to her. No one ever stands up to my mother. Someone should. Elena's smile was small but genuine. Yes, someone should. They parted ways in the lobby, each returning to their separate worlds. But something had shifted between them. Some invisible line had been crossed. They weren't just two people connected by biology anymore. They were allies, partners in something bigger than either of them had planned. And for the first time since that night in the bar, Adrian felt like maybe, just maybe, they could actually make this work. Victoria Vaughn's attempt to buy Adrian off became the catalyst that changed everything. Within 48 hours, the whispers started on the 14th floor. Adrian first noticed it in the break room, where conversation died the moment he walked in. Then came the sidelong glances in the hallway, the hushed voices that cut off when he passed. Someone knew something, and rumors spread through Vaughn Industries like wildfire through dry grass. By Friday afternoon, Adrian's team lead called him into a conference room with an expression that screamed discomfort. Brooks, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me. Marcus Chen was a decent guy, mid-40s, with 2 kids of his own and a no-nonsense approach to management. He looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Are the rumors true? About you and Ms. Vaughn? Adrian's stomach dropped. What rumors? Come on, man, don't make me say it. Marcus rubbed his face. Half the building is talking about how you've been seen going to her office multiple times. Someone in accounting swears they saw you two leaving a medical building together. And now people are saying she's pregnant and you're the father. The blood drained from Adrian's face. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. Denying it felt like lying. Confirming it felt like detonating a bomb. I can't talk about this, he said finally. That's not a denial. I can't talk about this, Adrian repeated more firmly this time. Whatever's being said, it's nobody's business but mine and Ms. Vaughn's. Marcus leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. Jesus, it's true, isn't it? Adrian said nothing, which was answer enough. Do you have any idea what kind of position this puts me in? Marcus's voice rose. What kind of position it puts the whole company in? If this gets out to the press, if the board finds out, I'm aware of the complications. Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've made a mess that could cost people their jobs, starting with yours. The words hit like a physical blow. Adrian had known this was coming, had braced himself for it, but hearing it out loud still felt like the ground crumbling beneath his feet. I haven't done anything wrong, he said, hating how defensive he sounded. What happened between me and Ms. Vaughn is personal. It doesn't affect my work. Everything affects work when you're sleeping with the CEO. I'm not sleeping with her. Adrian's voice went hard. We spent one night together months ago, before I even knew who she was. That's it. Nothing since. Nothing ongoing. Just two people trying to figure out how to handle an unexpected situation. Marcus studied him for a long moment. You know that doesn't matter, right? Perception is reality in corporate America. And the perception right now is that you're using her for a leg up. I'm not. I believe you, but it doesn't matter what I believe. Marcus stood up. Look, I like you, Brooks. You're a solid worker, you keep your head down, you never cause problems. But this is bigger than me. HR is going to get involved. Probably legal, too. My advice? Get ahead of it before it gets ahead of you. Adrian left the meeting feeling like he'd been hollowed out. He went back to his desk, stared at his computer screen without seeing it, and tried to figure out what getting ahead of it even meant. Tell the truth? Resign? Disappear the way Victoria Vaughn wanted him to? His phone buzzed. A text from Elena. We need to talk. Can you come to my apartment tonight? I'll send you the address. Adrian stared at the message, a fresh wave of anxiety washing over him. Elena never invited him to her personal space. Whatever she needed to talk about, it was serious. He texted Mrs. Chen to ask if she could watch Lucy overnight, citing a work emergency. The lie tasted bitter, but he couldn't exactly tell his elderly neighbor the truth. Mrs. Chen agreed immediately, as she always did, and Adrian spent the rest of the afternoon in a fog of dread. Elena's apartment was in one of those glass towers that seemed to scrape the sky, the kind of building where the doorman wore a suit nicer than anything in Adrian's closet. The lobby was all marble and modern art, the elevator so smooth he barely felt it move. He rode up to the penthouse level with his heart in his throat. Elena answered the door in leggings and an oversized sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. Without makeup and designer armor, she looked younger, more vulnerable. The curve of her belly was unmistakable now, pressing against the soft fabric. Come in, she said quietly. The apartment was exactly what Adrian expected, and somehow more. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, lights twinkling like a sea of stars. The furniture was minimal and expensive, the kind of aesthetic that screamed professional designer. Everything was perfect and pristine and utterly impersonal, like a hotel suite rather than a home. Can I get you something to drink? Elena asked, moving toward the kitchen. Water? Juice? I have decaf coffee, though it tastes like sadness. Water's fine. She poured 2 glasses and handed him one, then sank onto the couch with visible relief. Her hand went automatically to her stomach, rubbing small circles. She's been kicking all day, Elena said, noticing Adrian's gaze. The doctor said it's normal at this stage, but it's so strange, like there's a tiny person doing gymnastics inside me. Can I? Adrian gestured hesitantly. Elena nodded. Adrian sat beside her and placed his hand on her belly, feeling awkward and awed in equal measure. For a moment, nothing. Then, there. A small flutter against his palm like a butterfly testing its wings. That's her, he breathed. That's her. Elena's voice was soft. She's very active, especially at night when I'm trying to sleep. They sat like that for a minute, Adrian's hand on Elena's stomach, both of them connected to this tiny life neither had planned, but both were beginning to love. Finally, Elena pulled away and wrapped her arms around herself. The rumors are everywhere, she said. I've had 3 board members call me today asking if there's any truth to them. My assistant keeps giving me these looks like she's trying to decode a puzzle. And someone leaked to the press. I got a call from a gossip columnist asking if I'd care to comment on reports that I'm pregnant with an employee's child. Adrian's blood ran cold. What did you say? No comment, but that won't hold them off for long. Elena's voice shook. It's only a matter of time before this becomes front-page news, and once that happens, everything changes. For both of us. I know, my team lead confronted me today. He knows. And if he knows, the whole company knows. I'm sorry. Elena looked at him with genuine anguish. This is my fault. I should have been more careful. I should have... Stop. This isn't anyone's fault. It just is. Adrian ran his hands through his hair. But we need to decide what we're going to do, because hiding isn't working anymore. Elena stood and paced to the window, staring out at the city. My board wants me to deny everything. Issue a statement saying the rumors are false, maybe threaten legal action against whoever's spreading them. They think if I come down hard enough, people will back off. Will they? Maybe, for a while, but I'll be 7 months pregnant in 2 months. I can't hide that forever, and I don't... She trailed off, her reflection ghostly in the glass. I don't want to hide anymore. I'm exhausted from pretending, from being afraid of what people will think. Adrian joined her at the window. Below them, the city pulsed with light and life, millions of people living their own complicated stories. Then don't hide, he said. Tell the truth. Elena turned to face him. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it's honest. Adrian met her gaze. We can control how this story gets told. We can own it before someone else does. Or we can keep running and let the narrative spin out of control. If I confirm it publicly, the fallout will be massive. The press will have a field day. The board will lose their minds. There will be questions about professionalism, about whether I can still lead the company. Can you? Yes. Elena's voice was fierce. Being pregnant doesn't make me incompetent. It doesn't erase everything I've built. I'm still the same person who took this company from startup to billion-dollar empire. Then act like it. Stand up and own your truth. Elena studied him for a long moment. You're right. I hate that you're right, but you are. She took a shaky breath. I'm going to call an all-hands meeting Monday morning. I'll address the entire company and confirm that I'm pregnant, that we're having a child together. No more hiding. Are you sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Her hand found his. I need you there. When I make the announcement, I need you standing beside me so everyone knows this isn't some sordid scandal. It's two people trying to do right by their child. Adrian's throat tightened. Standing beside Elena in front of the entire company would paint a target on his back, bigger than anything he'd faced so far. But she was asking him to be there, to stand with her. Okay, he said. I'll be there. Relief flooded Elena's face. Thank you. They spent the next 2 hours planning what Elena would say, how she'd frame it, what questions might come. By the time Adrian left, it was past midnight and exhaustion dragged at his bones. But there was also something else, a sense that they were finally taking control instead of being controlled by circumstance. The weekend passed in a blur of anxiety. Adrian told Lucy he had to work Monday morning, another lie to add to the growing pile. She'd looked at him with those two knowing eyes, but didn't push. Mrs. Chen agreed to take her to school, and Adrian spent Sunday night staring at the ceiling, trying to imagine every possible way Monday could go wrong. Monday morning arrived with gray skies and a cold wind that cut through Adrian's jacket. He arrived at Vaughn Industries an hour early, his stomach a knot of nerves. The all-hands meeting was scheduled for 9, and already the main auditorium was filling with employees buzzing with speculation. Adrian found a spot against the back wall, trying to be invisible. Around him, people whispered theories and traded gossip. Most of the talk centered on Elena, whether she was sick, whether there was a merger, whether someone important had died. A few people mentioned the pregnancy rumors, but nobody seemed to think those could possibly be true. At exactly 9 o'clock, the lights dimmed and Elena walked onto the stage. She wore a navy dress that didn't hide her pregnancy so much as acknowledge it, her hair pulled back in a simple bun. Without her usual armor of severe suits and perfect makeup, she looked almost approachable. Human. The room fell silent as she approached the microphone. Good morning, she began, her voice steady despite the tremor Adrian could hear underneath. Thank you all for coming. I know the rumor mill has been working overtime this week, so I wanted to address the speculation directly rather than let misinformation spread. She paused, her hands gripping the podium. Adrian could see her knuckles white even from across the room. The rumors are true. I'm pregnant, due in April. And yes, the father works here at Vaughn Industries. The silence shattered into a wave of gasps and whispers. Elena raised her hand and the room quieted again. I know this raises questions about professionalism and leadership. I want to be clear, this wasn't planned. It wasn't a relationship that developed in the workplace or involved any abuse of power. It was a private matter between two consenting adults that has had unexpected consequences. Her voice grew stronger. But I'm not ashamed of it. I'm having a child, and I intend to be the best mother I can be while continuing to lead this company with the same dedication and vision that brought us here." Someone in the front row raised their hand. Elena nodded. "Is it true the father is Adrian Brooks from Analytics?" a woman's voice called out. Adrian's entire body went rigid. Every head in the room swiveled, searching for him. He felt 1,000 eyes land on him like physical weight. Elena's gaze found his across the crowded room. "Yes," she said simply. "Adrian is the father, and I've asked him to join me up here." The walk from the back wall to the stage felt like miles. Adrian's legs moved on autopilot while his brain screamed at him to run. Whispers followed him like a tide. When he reached the stage, Elena's hand found his, squeezing tight. "This is Adrian Brooks," she told the room. "Some of you know him from his work in analytics. What you don't know is that he's one of the most honorable men I've ever met. When he learned about the pregnancy, he didn't run. He didn't ask for money or favors. He simply promised to be there for our child. And he's kept that promise every day since." Adrian stood frozen under the scrutiny of hundreds of people, feeling exposed and vulnerable and utterly out of his depth. But Elena's hand in his anchored him. "I understand this is unconventional," Elena continued, "and I understand some of you may have concerns about how this affects the company. I want to assure you that my personal life will not interfere with my professional responsibilities. I've already discussed maternity leave plans with the board, and we have a comprehensive succession strategy in place." More hands shot up. Questions flew like arrows. "Will Mr. Brooks be receiving preferential treatment? Has HR been notified of this relationship? What does the board think about this situation?" Elena fielded each question with the same calm authority she brought to investor meetings. No, Adrian wouldn't receive special treatment. Yes, HR had been fully briefed. The board had been informed and was supportive of her decision to continue leading the company. It was a masterclass in crisis management, watching her turn a potential scandal into a simple statement of fact. By the time the meeting ended 30 minutes later, the mood in the room had shifted from shock to something closer to curiosity. People still stared at Adrian as he left the stage, but the whispers felt less vicious, more human. In the elevator back to the 14th floor, Adrian's hands shook. He'd just outed himself to the entire company, made himself a target, given up any chance at anonymity. But he'd also stood beside Elena, shown the world that he wasn't running. His phone buzzed before he reached his desk. "Marcus Chen, my office, now." Adrian's stomach dropped, but he turned and headed back to the conference room. Marcus was waiting, along with 2 people from HR and someone from legal. The serious expressions told Adrian everything he needed to know. "Mr. Brooks, thank you for joining us." The woman from legal, Patricia something, had a manila folder in front of her. "We need to discuss the optics of your relationship with Ms. Vaughn and how it affects your position here." "There is no relationship," Adrian said flatly. "We're having a child together. That's it." "Semantics, vets." Patricia opened the folder. "The fact remains that you're involved with the CEO. That creates complications, conflicts of interest, questions about favoritism and professional conduct. I haven't received any special treatment. That's not how it will be perceived, especially now that your situation is public knowledge." Patricia's voice was matter-of-fact, like she was reading from a script. "The board has concerns about how this reflects on the company culture, about the message it sends to other employees." Adrian's jaw clenched. "What are you saying?" "We're suggesting that it might be in everyone's best interest if you considered a voluntary resignation." The words landed like a punch to the gut. Adrian stared at them, his mind reeling. "You're firing me." "We're suggesting a voluntary resignation with a generous severance package," Patricia corrected. 6 months' salary, continued health insurance, excellent references. It would be a clean exit that protects both you and the company. "No." "Mr. Brooks." "No." Adrian's voice rose. "I've done nothing wrong. I'm good at my job. I've never missed a deadline or submitted subpar work. The only thing I'm guilty of is having a child with someone who happens to be my boss. And last I checked, that's not grounds for termination." Patricia exchanged a glance with the HR representatives. "We're not terminating you. We're offering you an exit strategy that allows you to leave with dignity." "I don't want an exit strategy. I want to keep my job and support my family. Adrian stood, his chair scraping against the floor. If you want me gone, you'll have to actually fire me. And good luck explaining that to the press after Ms. Vaughn just stood in front of the whole company and vouched for my character. He walked out before they could respond, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. Back at his desk, he tried to focus on work, but the numbers on his screen blurred together. His phone buzzed again. Elena this time. Are you okay? I heard legal pulled you in. They want me to resign, offered severance. What did you say? No. A long pause. Then, good. Don't let them bully you. I'm calling an emergency board meeting this afternoon. This ends now. Adrian wanted to tell her not to make waves, that he could handle it, but he knew that was a lie. He couldn't handle this alone. And maybe that was okay. Maybe accepting help wasn't the same as being weak. The afternoon dragged on with excruciating slowness. Adrian fielded curious looks from coworkers and ignored the whispered conversations that died when he approached. By 4 o'clock, his phone rang again. Elena. It's done, she said without preamble. I told the board that if they force you out, I walk too. Adrian nearly dropped his phone. You what? You heard me. I made it clear that pushing you to resign is unacceptable, that you're the father of my child, and I won't stand by while they treat you like a liability. Her voice was fierce. They backed down. You keep your job, your position, everything. And if anyone gives you trouble, they answer to me. Elena, you can't threaten to quit. The company needs you. And I need you. The words hung in the air between them. I need you to be there for our daughter. I need you to not be destroyed by association with me. And I'm done letting other people dictate what happens in my life. Adrian sank into his chair, overwhelmed. Thank you. Don't thank me. You shouldn't have been in that position in the first place. Elena's voice softened. How are you holding up? Honestly, I feel like I've been hit by a truck. Same. But we survived the day. That's something. They talked for a few more minutes before Elena had to go deal with board politics. Adrian sat at his desk until 6, then packed up and headed home, exhausted down to his bones. Lucy was waiting when he arrived, bouncing with barely contained energy. Mrs. Chen said you were on TV, she announced. At work. What happened? Adrian's heart sank. He'd forgotten about the possibility of news coverage. It wasn't TV exactly, just a company meeting. But people were talking about it. Mrs. Chen heard it from her friend whose daughter works downtown. She said you were standing with someone important. Lucy's eyes widened. Is this about the secret, the complicated thing? There was no more hiding, no more half-truths. Adrian knelt down so they were eye level. Yeah, Bug, it's about the complicated thing. He took a breath. Remember how you asked if there was a girl? Uh-huh. Well, there is. Her name is Elena, and she's going to have a baby in April. Lucy's face went through a series of expressions, confusion, surprise, then excitement. A baby? Like a real baby? A real baby. A little girl. And she's yours? She's mine. Which means, Adrian's throat tightened, which means you're going to be a big sister. Lucy processed this for a moment. Then her face split into the biggest smile Adrian had seen in months. I'm going to be a big sister? She threw her arms around his neck. Really, really? Really, really. This is the best news ever. Lucy pulled back, her eyes shining. Can I help pick her name? Can I teach her stuff? When do I get to meet her? Adrian laughed despite everything, feeling some of the day's tension drain away. She won't be born until April, but yes, you can help with everything, if you want to. Of course I want to. Lucy bounced on her toes. Wait, does this mean the important person is the baby's mom? Yes, her name is Elena. She's my boss at work. Your boss? Lucy's nose wrinkled. Is that allowed? It's complicated. Adrian smoothed her hair. But yes, it's allowed. And she's a good person, Bug. I think you'll like her. Does she know about me? She does. And she wants to meet you when you're ready. Lucy thought about this seriously. Is she nice? She's scared. Just like I was scared when Mommy died and I didn't know how to be a dad by myself. But she's trying her best. Then I'll be nice to her. Lucy's expression turned solemn, because Mommy always said we should be kind to people who are scared. Adrian pulled his daughter close, fighting back tears. Your mom was right, and she'd be so proud of you. That night, after Lucy finally fell asleep clutching a baby name book she'd begged to borrow from the library, Adrian sat on his couch and texted Elena. I told Lucy she's excited about being a big sister. Elena's response came quickly. How did she take the news about me? She wants to meet you, said she'll be nice to you because her mom taught her to be kind to people who are scared. A long pause, then, she sounds wonderful. I'm terrified of disappointing her. You won't. Just be yourself. What if myself isn't enough? Adrian thought about how to respond. Finally, then we figure it out together, like everything else. The next few weeks brought a strange new normal. The gossip at work gradually died down as people found new scandals to whisper about. Adrian kept his head down and did his job, ignoring the occasional curious looks. Elena continued running the company with the same fierce competence, though she'd started delegating more as her pregnancy advanced. They fell into a rhythm of regular meetings, coffee dates that felt less awkward now, doctor appointments where they watched their daughter grow on ultrasound screens, quiet conversations about everything from baby names to parenting philosophies. Slowly, the strangers who'd spent one drunken night together began to know each other. Really know each other. Adrian learned that Elena was terrified of failure, that she'd built her empire as armor against the loneliness that had defined her childhood, that her parents' divorce when she was 10 had taught her that love was temporary and people always left, that she'd married once before, young and hopeful, only to have it fall apart in the most devastating way possible. She told him about it one evening in late November, sitting in his apartment while Lucy was at a sleepover. They'd been discussing parenting strategies when Elena had gone quiet, her hand on her belly. There's something you should know, she'd said, about why I'm so terrified of this pregnancy. Okay? Elena had taken a shaky breath. I was married before, 6 years ago, to a man named David. We were young and ambitious and thought we had everything figured out. Her voice went hollow. I got pregnant 8 months into the marriage, unplanned like this, but we were happy about it. Excited even. Adrian had felt dread pooling in his stomach. I was 24 and running a startup that was about to close a major funding round. The timing was terrible, but I thought I could handle it, thought I could have it all. Elena's eyes filled with tears. I worked through the pregnancy. 80-hour weeks, constant stress, pushing myself beyond any reasonable limit. And at 32 weeks, I went into premature labor. Elena, she was born alive, so tiny. They put her in the NICU and told us she might make it. For 3 days she fought. And then, Elena's voice broke. Then her heart just stopped, and they couldn't bring her back. Adrian reached for her hand, squeezing tight. David blamed me, said I'd prioritized work over our baby, that if I'd just slowed down, taken it easy, she would have survived. The tears spilled over now. My mother said the same thing, that I was too selfish to be a mother, too ambitious, that I'd killed my own child through negligence. That's not true, Adrian said fiercely. Isn't it? I made choices that put my career first, and my baby paid the price. No, you made the choices millions of working women make every day. What happened wasn't your fault. It was a tragedy, but it wasn't your fault. Elena looked at him with so much pain in her eyes, it hurt to witness. I can't go through that again, Adrian. I can't lose another child, and I can't survive being blamed for it a second time. You won't lose this baby, and I won't blame you for anything. Adrian pulled her close. Whatever happens, we're in this together. You're not alone this time. She'd cried in his arms for a long time that night, years of grief pouring out in broken sobs. And Adrian had held her, this woman who terrified boardrooms but fell apart behind closed doors, and understood why she'd been so frightened all along. After that conversation, something fundamental shifted between them. The walls came down. They talked more freely, shared more openly. Elena spent an afternoon playing board games with Lucy, who declared her really smart but kind of bad at Candyland. Adrian helped Elena set up a nursery in her penthouse, painting walls a soft yellow and assembling furniture that came with incomprehensible instructions. By December, they'd settled into something that felt almost like partnership, not romance. That line remained uncrossed, but genuine friendship built on shared purpose and growing trust. Then Victoria Vaughn came back. She appeared without warning on a Tuesday evening, arriving at Elena's apartment while Adrian was there helping sort through baby clothes donations from Elena's assistant. The doorbell rang, and Elena had frozen like a deer in headlights. "That's my mother," she'd said. I recognized the knock. Adrian had wanted to leave, to give them privacy, but Elena had grabbed his hand. "Stay, please. I can't do this alone." So he'd stayed while Elena opened the door to reveal Victoria Vaughn in all her Ice Queen glory, perfectly coiffed and carrying a designer shopping bag. "Elena." Victoria's gaze swept the apartment, landing on Adrian with barely concealed disdain. "I see you have company." "Mother, what are you doing here?" "I came to talk, and to bring you something." Victoria held up the bag. "May I come in?" Elena stepped aside reluctantly. Victoria glided into the apartment, her heels clicking on the hardwood, and set the bag on the coffee table before turning to face them both. "I owe you an apology," she said, the words clearly costing her. "Both of you." Adrian nearly choked. Elena's mouth fell open. "I've had time to think," Victoria continued stiffly, "about what I said, about the check, about my assumptions regarding Mr. Brooks' character." She looked at Adrian directly for the first time. "I was wrong." "I'm sorry, what?" Elena found her voice. "I was wrong," Victoria repeated. "I made judgments based on my own bitter experiences rather than the reality of your situation, and She paused, something cracking in her perfect composure. "I don't want to lose you the way I lost your father. I don't want my fear to drive you away." Elena sank onto the couch, looking shell-shocked. "I don't understand. What changed?" "I had lunch with Diane Marston last week. You remember her? She was at your wedding to David." Elena nodded mutely. "She told me about her daughter, about how she got pregnant at 19 with a boy Diane thought was completely unsuitable. She tried to break them up, offered the boy money to leave, did everything in her power to end it." Victoria's voice went quiet. "And her daughter hasn't spoken to her in 15 years. She missed the wedding, the birth of her grandchildren, everything, because she couldn't accept that her daughter had made a choice different from what she wanted." Adrian watched this woman who'd tried to buy him off standing in her daughter's living room, admitting she'd been wrong. It felt surreal. "I don't want that to be us," Victoria said to Elena. "I've already lost so much. My marriage, my relationship with you after the baby died. I can't lose you again. And I can't lose my grandchild before I even meet her." "Grandchild," Elena whispered. "You want to be involved?" "If you'll allow it. I know I've given you no reason to trust me, but I'd like to try. To be better than I was last time." For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Elena stood and crossed to her mother, wrapping her arms around the older woman in a fierce hug. Victoria stood rigid for a heartbeat before her arms came up to return the embrace, and Adrian saw tears streaming down both their faces. "I'm sorry," Victoria whispered. "I'm so sorry for what I said when you lost the baby. It wasn't your fault. It was never your fault." Elena sobbed harder, and Victoria held her daughter like she was made of glass. Adrian quietly excused himself, giving them privacy for a reconciliation years in the making. He slipped out into the hallway and leaned against the wall, processing what he'd just witnessed. Victoria Vaughn had actually apologized, had admitted she was wrong, had chosen her daughter over her pride. Maybe people could change after all. His phone buzzed, a text from Mrs. Chen. "Lucy is asking when you'll be home. I made extra pot roast if you're hungry." Adrian smiled and typed back, "On my way." He was halfway to the elevator when Elena's door opened. She stepped into the hallway, her eyes red, but her smile genuine. "Thank you," she said, "for staying, for being here." "Always." "My mother wants to take us to dinner, all of us. You, me, Lucy if she's willing. A proper meeting." Elena laughed shakily. "I never thought I'd see the day." "Is that what you want?" "I think so. She's trying, Adrian, really trying, and I want our daughter to know her grandmother." Elena's hand went to her belly. "I want her to have what I didn't. A family that stays." Adrian thought about Lucy waiting at home, about the family they were building from broken pieces and second chances. "Then let's make that happen." They stood together in the quiet hallway, two people who'd started as strangers and become something far more complicated, something that felt, against all odds, like hope. The dinner Victoria proposed took 3 weeks to actually happen, scheduled and rescheduled around board meetings and Lucy's school play, and the general chaos of December. When the night finally arrived, Adrian stood in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie for the 5th time, wondering if he'd lost his mind agreeing to this. "Daddy, you look fancy." Lucy appeared in the doorway wearing the new dress Mrs. Chen had helped her pick out, deep green velvet with a white collar that made her look older than 8. "Are you nervous?" "A little bit," Adrian admitted. "Me too. What if Elena's mom doesn't like me?" Adrian knelt down, straightening his daughter's collar. "She'll love you, Bug." "How could she not?" "She didn't like you at first." "That's true. But she came around. And you're much more charming than I am." Lucy giggled, then grew serious. "Is Elena going to be there?" "Yes. This is kind of a family dinner." "But we're not a family, not a real one." The words hit harder than Adrian expected. He took Lucy's small hands in his. "We're becoming one. It might not look like other families, but that doesn't make it less real." "Like how we're a family even without Mommy?" "Exactly like that." Adrian's throat tightened. Family isn't just about who lives in the same house. It's about who shows up, who stays, who loves you even when things get complicated. Lucy thought about this, her face scrunched in concentration. "Okay, then let's go meet our weird family." The restaurant Victoria had chosen was the kind of place that required reservations months in advance, where the waiters wore better suits than Adrian owned, and the menu didn't list prices because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. Adrian felt out of place the moment they walked through the door, but Lucy's eyes went wide with wonder at the crystal chandeliers and white tablecloths. Elena was already seated when they arrived, and Adrian's breath caught. She wore a flowing midnight blue dress that accommodated her now prominent belly, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked beautiful and terrified in equal measure. "Adrian?" "Lucy." Elena stood awkwardly, her hand going to her stomach. "I'm so glad you came." Lucy stared up at Elena with open curiosity. "You're really pretty and really pregnant." "Lucy," Adrian said, mortified. But Elena laughed, real and genuine. "Thank you. And yes, very pregnant. Your baby sister is getting big." "Can I touch?" Lucy asked with the blunt honesty of children. Elena glanced at Adrian, who nodded encouragingly. She knelt down carefully. "Sure, right here. She's been kicking a lot today." Lucy placed her small hand on Elena's belly, her face a picture of concentration. After a moment, her eyes went wide. "I felt her. She kicked me." "She did. I think she knows her big sister is here." "Does she have a name yet?" "Not yet. We're still deciding. Do you have any suggestions?" Lucy launched into an enthusiastic list of names she'd compiled from library books and playground discussions, most of them belonging to Disney princesses or her favorite teachers. Elena listened with patient attention, nodding seriously at each suggestion, and Adrian felt something shift in his chest watching them together. Victoria arrived 15 minutes late, making an entrance in a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than Adrian's car. She swept into the restaurant with the confidence of someone who owned half the city, but when her eyes landed on their table, something in her expression softened. "Elena, Mr. Brooks." She turned to Lucy. "And you must be Lucy. Your father has told me wonderful things about you." Lucy looked at Adrian with wide eyes that clearly asked when he'd talked to this intimidating woman. Adrian gave a subtle shrug. "It's nice to meet you, ma'am," Lucy said in her best polite voice. "Please, call me Victoria." The older woman sat down, and a waiter immediately appeared with menus. "I took the liberty of ordering wine for the table. Oh, except for you, dear," she added to Elena. "I had them prepare a special mocktail." The dinner started stiffly, everyone too careful with their words, too aware of the delicate balance they were trying to maintain. But Lucy, bless her, had no sense of awkwardness. She chattered away about school and her spelling bee victory and the Christmas pageant she was starring in, her enthusiasm slowly melting the ice around the table. "And I'm going to be Mary," she announced proudly. "Mrs. Morrison said I have the best voice for the solo." "That's wonderful," Elena said. "When is the performance?" "Next Friday at 7. But it's okay if you can't come. Daddy said you're really busy." Elena glanced at Adrian, something unreadable in her expression. "I'll be there." "Really?" Lucy's face lit up. "You promise?" "I promise." Victoria watched this exchange with keen eyes. Elena, surely you have board commitments that evening. I'll reschedule them. Elena's voice was firm. Lucy invited me to something important. I'm not missing it. Something passed between mother and daughter. A silent conversation Adrian couldn't quite read. Finally, Victoria smiled. Then I'll attend as well. It's been too long since I've been to a school pageant. Lucy looked like she might burst with excitement. This is the best day ever. The rest of the dinner passed more easily. Victoria asked Adrian about his work with genuine interest, nodding thoughtfully as he explained data analysis and predictive modeling. She told stories about Elena's childhood that made her daughter groan with embarrassment, but also laugh. And slowly, brick by brick, the wall between them began to come down. Over dessert, Victoria set down her fork and looked at Adrian directly. I want to apologize again for my behavior when we first met. I made assumptions based on past hurts rather than present realities. That was unfair to you. Thank you, Adrian said, meaning it. I also want you to know that I've set up a trust fund for the baby, and for Lucy as well. Victoria held up a hand when Adrian opened his mouth to protest. This isn't charity, Mr. Brooks. This is a grandmother ensuring her granddaughters have opportunities. You don't have to touch it if you don't want to, but it will be there when they need it. College, first homes, whatever they choose. Adrian felt his eyes burn. That's very generous. It's practical, and it's what family does. Victoria's gaze softened. You've shown me what it means to stay, Mr. Brooks. To honor your commitments even when they're difficult. That's worth more than any amount of money. Lucy, who'd been following the conversation with intense focus, suddenly asked, Does this mean you're my grandma too? Victoria blinked, clearly caught off guard. If you'd like me to be. I would. I never had a grandma before. Mine died before I was born. Miss Lucy's logic was simple and devastating. So if you're the baby's grandma, you should be mine too. That's fair. Victoria's composure cracked completely. Her eyes filled with tears she didn't bother to hide. Then I would be honored to be your grandmother, Lucy. Cool. Can I call you Grandma Vicky? Absolutely not. Victoria will do just fine. Lucy giggled. Okay, Grandma Victoria. The older woman smiled despite herself, and Adrian realized he was witnessing something rare. Victoria Vaughn choosing love over pride, connection over control. It gave him hope that maybe, just maybe, they could actually make this impossible family work. The following Friday, Adrian sat in the elementary school auditorium between Elena and Victoria, watching his daughter shine on stage. Lucy belted out her solo with such enthusiasm that she occasionally went off key, but her joy was infectious. When the performance ended, they all stood and applauded, and Adrian felt Elena's hand slip into his. She's amazing, Elena whispered. She is. I want our daughter to be like that, brave and unselfconscious and full of light. She will be. She'll have Lucy to teach her. Elena squeezed his hand tighter, and Adrian realized this was the first time they touched like this. Not accidentally, not for medical reasons, but simply because they wanted to. It felt significant, a shift in whatever was growing between them. After the pageant, they took Lucy out for ice cream despite the December cold. Victoria insisted on paying, and they crowded into a booth at Lucy's favorite diner, eating sundaes and replaying her performance. Lucy basked in the attention, recounting every moment with elaborate detail. And then Tommy forgot his line, so I whispered it to him real quiet. And Mrs. Morrison said that was good helping, she said through a mouthful of chocolate ice cream. That was very kind of you, Victoria said, looking out for your castmates. Mommy always said we should help people who are stuck, that it's not showing off if you're being nice. A hush fell over the table. Lucy rarely mentioned Sarah anymore, and when she did, it always caught Adrian off guard. He watched his daughter carefully, looking for signs of sadness, but she just kept eating her ice cream. Elena broke the silence gently. Your mom sounds like she was a wonderful person. She was the best. She made really good pancakes, and she knew all the songs, and she gave the best hugs. Lucy looked up at Elena with serious eyes. Daddy cries sometimes when he thinks I'm asleep. I think he misses her a lot. Adrian's chest constricted. He thought he'd been quiet, careful, but of course Lucy knew. She always knew. I'm sure he does, Elena said softly. It's okay to miss people we love. It means they mattered. Do you miss people? Yes. I had a baby before, a long time ago. She died when she was very small. I think about her every day. Lucy processed this with the solemn gravity only children could manage. That's really sad. I'm sorry that happened to you. Thank you, sweetheart. But now you're having another baby, and maybe this one won't die, and then you'll be happy again. The simple logic broke something in Elena's expression. She pressed her hand to her mouth, tears spilling over. Victoria reached across the table and squeezed her daughter's arm. I hope so, Elena managed. I really hope so. Lucy nodded, satisfied, and went back to her ice cream like she hadn't just delivered a devastating truth with the casual wisdom of an 8-year-old. Later that night, after dropping Lucy off with Mrs. Chen for a sleepover, Adrian walked Elena to her car in the restaurant parking lot. The temperature had dropped, and their breath made clouds in the air. Thank you for coming tonight, Adrian said. It meant a lot to Lucy. And to me. I wouldn't have missed it. Elena wrapped her coat tighter around her belly. Lucy is remarkable, Adrian. You've done an incredible job with her. I've done my best. Some days that's barely enough. It's more than enough. Elena hesitated. Can I tell you something? Of course. I'm terrified I won't love our daughter the way you love Lucy, that I won't know how. Her voice cracked. I look at you two together and it's so natural, so easy. And I don't have that. I don't know how to be warm and open and... Stop. Adrian took her hands. You don't have to be me. You just have to be you. And I've watched you with Lucy tonight. The way you listened to her, really listened. The way you shared something painful because she needed to understand she wasn't alone in her grief. That's love, Elena. You already know how. What if it's not enough? It will be. And you won't be alone this time. You'll have me and Lucy. And apparently your mother, who has somehow transformed into an actual grandmother. Elena laughed through her tears. That is still shocking. Miracles happen. They stood close in the cold parking lot, and Adrian became acutely aware of how little distance separated them. He could see the flecks of gold in Elena's dark eyes, could smell her perfume mixing with the winter air. For a moment, he thought about kissing her, about closing that final gap between them. But he didn't, because whatever was happening between them was too important to rush, too fragile to risk with a moment of impulse. I should go, Elena said quietly, before I freeze to death. Text me when you get home. I will. Adrian watched her drive away, then sat in his own car for a long moment before starting the engine. Something was shifting between them, something that felt like more than partnership or friendship, but neither of them was ready to name it yet. December melted into January, and Elena's pregnancy advanced into the final stretch. She was 34 weeks now, her belly enormous, her movements careful. The company had officially announced her maternity leave plan, with her COO stepping in as interim CEO for 3 months. The press had covered it extensively, most articles praising her for breaking barriers and proving women could have it all, though a few still questioned whether a CEO should be taking time off. Elena had responded to exactly one article, issuing a statement that Adrian had helped her write. I'm proving that women can make choices about their own lives and careers without needing permission from strangers. My daughter deserves a mother who is present. My company deserves a leader who is focused. I can be both, just not simultaneously. That's called balance, not failure. The statement had gone viral, sparking debates about working mothers and corporate culture. But Elena had stopped reading the commentary. She had bigger things to worry about, like the fact that her carefully organized birth plan was about to be tested. Adrian was at his desk on a Tuesday afternoon when his phone rang. Elena's name flashed on the screen, and his heart jumped. Hey, everything okay? I'm at the doctor. They're admitting me to the hospital. Elena's voice was tight with controlled panic. My blood pressure is too high. They're talking about preeclampsia and possibly inducing labor early. The world tilted sideways. How early? I'm 36 weeks. They said the baby's big enough, that it should be safe. But Adrian, I'm terrified. Last time I was 32 weeks and she died, and what if... Stop. Breathe. Where are you? Mercy General, they're taking me to the maternity ward now. I'm on my way. I'll be there in 20 minutes. What about work? You can't just leave. Watch me. Adrian grabbed his jacket and practically ran to the elevator. He texted Marcus a vague emergency excuse, texted Mrs. Chen to ask if she could get Lucy from school, and broke probably a dozen traffic laws getting to the hospital. He found Elena in a private room, already hooked up to monitors that beeped steadily. She wore a hospital gown that made her look small and vulnerable despite her belly. Her face was pale, her hands shaking. "You came," she breathed. "Of course I came." Adrian took her hand. "What did the doctors say?" "My blood pressure spiked this morning. They ran tests and I'm showing early signs of preeclampsia. If it gets worse, they'll have to deliver tonight. If it stabilizes, maybe a few more days." Her grip tightened. "I'm not ready, Adrian. It's too soon. What if something goes wrong?" "Nothing's going to go wrong. The doctors are watching you. The baby's almost full term. You're in the best hospital in the city." "That's what they said last time." "And she still died." Adrian climbed onto the bed beside her, careful of the wires and tubes, and wrapped his arms around her. Elena collapsed against him, her fear finally breaking free in great shaking sobs. "I can't lose her," she gasped. "I can't survive that again." "You won't. She's strong. You're strong." Adrian held her tighter. "And I'm right here. You're not doing this alone." They stayed like that until a nurse came to check Elena's vitals. The blood pressure reading was still elevated, but not dangerously so. The doctor, a calm woman in her 40s named Dr. Martinez, recommended 24 hours of monitoring before making any decisions about delivery. "Try to rest," Dr. Martinez said. "Stress makes everything worse. I know that's easier said than done, but for the baby's sake, try to stay calm." After she left, Elena looked at Adrian with exhausted eyes. "You don't have to stay. I'll be fine." "I'm not going anywhere." "What about Lucy?" "Mrs. Chen's got her. She knows there's an emergency." "I'm ruining everything. Your job, your time with your daughter." "Stop." Adrian took her face in his hands. "You're not ruining anything. You're having our baby. Nothing is more important than that. Nothing." Elena's eyes filled with fresh tears. "Why are you so good to me? I don't deserve this." "Yes, you do. You deserve someone who stays, and I promised you I would." Hours passed in tense waiting. Nurses came and went, checking monitors and adjusting medications. Adrian called Mrs. Chen to explain the situation in vague terms, then talked to Lucy on the phone, assuring her everything was fine while his daughter asked 1,000 worried questions. "Is Elena sick?" Lucy asked. "She's okay, Bug. Just being careful with the baby." "Can I come see her?" Adrian glanced at Elena, who nodded despite her pale face. "Maybe tomorrow, if the doctors say it's okay. Tell her I hope she feels better, and tell the baby to be good and not give her mom trouble." "I will, sweetheart." After he hung up, Elena smiled weakly. "She's worried about me. She cares about you. You've become important to her." "I've become important to both of you. That terrifies me more than the pregnancy." "Why?" "Because people I become important to always end up hurt." Elena's voice went hollow. "My ex-husband, my mother, my baby who died. I'm poison, Adrian. Everyone who gets close to me suffers." "That's not true. Your mother is closer to you now than she's been in years. Lucy adores you. And He caught himself, words hovering on the edge of something too big to name. "You're not poison. You're just human. And humans are messy and complicated, and sometimes life hurts them. But that's not your fault." Elena studied him in the dim hospital light. "What were you about to say? Before you stopped yourself?" Adrian's heart pounded. "Nothing." Liar. He took a breath, knowing this was dangerous territory, but unable to stop himself. "I was going to say that I care about you, more than I expected to, more than I probably should." The silence stretched between them, heavy with implications. Finally, Elena spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "I care about you too. And that scares me more than anything." "Why?" "Because last time I cared about someone, I lost everything. My marriage, my baby, myself." She pressed her hand to her belly. "I can't survive losing you too." "You won't lose me." "You can't promise that." "Yes, I can." Adrian shifted closer. "I'm not going anywhere, Elena. Not because of the baby, not because it's the right thing to do, but because I want to be here. With you." Elena's breath hitched. "Adrian, You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. They sat in charged silence, the monitors beeping steadily, the baby moving between them. Adrian could feel his heart beating too fast, could feel the weight of everything unsaid hanging in the air. Then Elena leaned forward and kissed him. It was soft and hesitant, nothing like their drunken encounter months ago. This was deliberate, careful. A question asked and answered in the touch of lips. Adrian kissed her back, his hand cupping her face, tasting salt from her tears, and something sweeter underneath. When they pulled apart, Elena was crying again. "I'm so scared," she whispered. "I know. Not just of the delivery, of all of it, of letting myself hope, of believing this could actually work. It's already working." Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "We're already a family. We just have to stop being afraid of it." Elena laughed shakily. "That's easier said than done. Everything worth having is." They fell asleep like that, tangled together on the narrow hospital bed, holding each other against the fear. And when morning came and Elena's blood pressure was still elevated and Dr. Martinez made the call to induce labor, they faced it together. The induction started at 8 in the morning with medications that made Elena's contractions begin slowly, then build in intensity. By noon, she was gripping Adrian's hand hard enough to leave bruises, her face sheened with sweat. This was a terrible idea, she gasped between contractions. "Why do people do this voluntarily?" "Because babies are worth it, allegedly. You're not funny." "I'm a little funny." "You're—" Another contraction hit, and Elena's words dissolved into a groan. Adrian held her through it, whispering encouragement, wishing he could take some of the pain for her. Victoria arrived at 2 in the afternoon, surprising them both. She'd somehow gotten past hospital security despite not being on the approved visitors list, striding into the delivery room like she owned it. "Mother, what are you doing here?" Elena panted. "Supporting my daughter. What does it look like?" Victoria set down an expensive-looking bag. "I brought supplies. Lip balm, hair ties, cold compress, magazines for Mr. Brooks since he looks like he might pass out." "I'm fine," Adrian said, though truthfully the thought of watching Elena in pain was making him nauseous. "You're pale as a ghost. Sit down before you fall down." Victoria took charge with the efficiency of a general commanding troops, updating doctors on Elena's status, adjusting pillows, holding her daughter's other hand through contractions. And despite everything, despite their complicated history, Elena seemed to draw strength from her mother's presence. Hours blurred together. The contractions got stronger, closer together. Elena cried and cursed and gripped both Adrian's and Victoria's hands until their fingers went numb. The medical team checked her progress with frustrating frequency, announcing centimeters of dilation like they were miles in a marathon. At 7 in the evening, Dr. Martinez checked again and smiled. "You're ready. Time to push." Terror flooded Elena's face. I can't do this." "Yes, you can," Adrian said firmly. "You're the strongest person I know. You can do anything." "What if something goes wrong?" "Then we handle it, together, but nothing's going wrong. She's going to be perfect." Elena looked at him with eyes full of fear and hope and desperate faith. "Promise me you'll stay, no matter what happens. Promise me." "I promise. I'm not going anywhere." The pushing began, and Adrian had never felt more useless in his life. All he could do was hold Elena's hand and count with the nurses and tell her she was amazing, even as she screamed that she hated him for getting her into this situation. "Never again," she gasped. "We are never having sex again." "We haven't had sex since that one night," Adrian pointed out. "Well, we're definitely not starting now." Even Victoria cracked a smile at that. The room filled with organized chaos. Nurses adjusting equipment, doctor. Martinez calling out instructions. Monitors beeping frantically. And then, cutting through everything, a sound that made Adrian's heart stop. A cry. Thin and wavering and absolutely furious, the most beautiful sound he'd ever heard. "She's here," Dr. Martinez announced, holding up a tiny, red-faced baby girl covered in vernix and determination. "You have a daughter," Elena sobbed, reaching for the baby with shaking hands. The nurses cleaned her quickly and placed her on Elena's chest, and the world narrowed to this one perfect moment, this tiny person who'd been a possibility and was now real, breathing, alive. "Hi, baby," Elena whispered, tears streaming down her face. Hi, sweet girl. I'm your mama. I'm your mama and I love you so much. The baby quieted at Elena's voice, her unfocused eyes trying to find the source. And Adrian felt something crack open in his chest, a wall he hadn't known he'd built crumbling to dust. This was his daughter. This tiny, perfect person was his. Do you want to hold her? Elena asked, her voice thick with emotion. Adrian nodded, not trusting himself to speak. The nurse showed him how to support the head, how to cradle her properly, and then she was in his arms, so small, so fragile, so absolutely perfect. Hey there, he whispered. I'm your dad. I've been waiting to meet you. The baby made a small sound, and Adrian felt his heart expand impossibly larger. He looked up to find Elena watching him with an expression that made his breath catch. Love. Pure, uncomplicated, overwhelming love. She needs a name, Victoria said softly from the corner, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. Elena and Adrian looked at each other, and the name they'd discussed weeks ago seemed to speak itself. Hope, Elena said. Her name is Hope. Hope, Adrian repeated, looking down at his daughter. Welcome to the world, Hope Brooks Vaughn. The baby yawned, completely unconcerned with the enormity of what her existence meant. And in that moment, in that hospital room surrounded by beeping machines and exhausted joy, a family was born from chaos and fear and the desperate choice to stay. Hope Brooks Vaughn weighed 5 pounds, 3 ounces, and came into the world 4 weeks early with lungs that worked perfectly and a cry that could wake the dead. But despite her vigorous entrance, Dr. Martinez recommended a precautionary stay in the NICU for monitoring, given her premature birth and Elena's preeclampsia complications. The moment they wheeled Hope away in her tiny transparent bassinet, Elena's composure shattered completely. No, she gasped, trying to sit up despite the exhaustion. Don't take her. Please don't take her. Miss Vaughn, it's just a precaution, the NICU nurse said gently. She's breathing beautifully on her own. We just want to monitor her for a few days to make sure everything stays stable. Last time they said that. Last time they took her to the NICU and she died. Elena's voice rose to near hysteria. I can't go through that again. Please. Adrian moved to her side immediately, gripping her shoulders. Elena, look at me. Look at me. He waited until her wild eyes focused on his face. Hope is not your first baby. She's strong. She's healthy. They're being careful, not because something's wrong, but because they want to keep her safe. You don't know that. You can't promise. You're right, I can't promise. But I can go with her. I can stay in the NICU and watch her every second and call you with updates every hour. You won't be alone in this. Neither will she. Elena searched his face desperately. You'll stay with her? Every minute until they bring her back to you. Mr. Brooks, the NICU has strict visiting hours, the nurse interjected. Victoria stepped forward, her voice carrying the weight of someone who donated entire hospital wings. I believe you'll find that Mr. Brooks is the baby's father and has every right to remain with his daughter. I suggest you check your policies before denying him access. The nurse's eyes widened, clearly recognizing Victoria Vaughn. I'll speak with the charge nurse. 10 minutes later, Adrian found himself gowned and scrubbed, following Hope's bassinet down the hallway to the NICU. The unit was a maze of incubators and monitors, premature babies smaller than dolls fighting for every breath. But Hope's bassinet went to the feeder grower section, where the babies were stable but needed time to gain weight and strength. They settled her under warming lights, attached monitors to track her heart rate and oxygen levels. Adrian pulled a chair close and watched every breath his daughter took, terrified that if he looked away, something would go wrong. A NICU nurse named Patricia noticed him and brought him a pillow and blanket. First-time NICU parent? She asked kindly. Is it that obvious? You have the look. Like if you blink, she might disappear. Patricia checked Hope's monitors with practiced efficiency. She's doing great, Dad. Really. Her stats are perfect. She just needs to prove she can maintain her temperature and feeding routine, and she'll be out of here in no time. How long is no time? Could be 3 days, could be a week. Every baby's different, Patricia smiled. But this one's a fighter. I can tell. Adrian called Elena every hour as promised, giving detailed reports on Hope's vitals, her color, the small movements she made in sleep. Elena cried through most of the calls, her hormones and fear creating a perfect storm of emotion. Victoria had stayed with her, refusing to leave her daughter alone in the recovery room. "She's beautiful," Adrian told Elena during the midnight call. "She has your nose, and I think your eyes, though it's hard to tell yet, and she makes these little sounds in her sleep like she's having conversations with herself." "I want to see her." Elena's voice was raw. "I can't stand being apart from her. As soon as the doctor clears you to move, we'll bring you down. I promise." "Adrian?" Elena's voice went small. "Thank you for being there. For her. For me. There's nowhere else I'd rather be." He meant it. Sitting in that NICU chair watching his daughter sleep, Adrian felt something settle in his chest that he hadn't even known was unsettled. This was where he belonged. This was his purpose. Not just being Lucy's father, but being Hope's too. Being the man who stayed when things got hard. Lucy arrived at the hospital at 7 in the morning, dragged by an exhausted but determined Mrs. Chen. Adrian met them in the lobby, and his older daughter launched herself into his arms. "Is the baby okay? Is Elena okay? Mrs. Chen said there was an emergency and I was so scared and—" "Everyone's okay, Bug. Everyone's safe." Adrian held her tight. "Do you want to meet your baby sister?" Lucy's eyes went impossibly wide. "She's born? She's really here?" "She's really here. Her name is Hope." "Hope," Lucy whispered, testing the name. "That's pretty. Can I see her right now?" Adrian looked at Mrs. Chen, who nodded encouragingly. "The NICU allows sibling visits with supervision. I already checked." They gowned Lucy in a tiny yellow isolation gown that swallowed her small frame, scrubbed her hands until they were pink, and led her into the NICU. Adrian watched his daughter's face as she took in the room full of tiny babies and serious machines. She looked scared but determined. At Hope's bassinet, Lucy stood on tiptoes to peer over the edge. "She's so small," she breathed. "She's like a doll, but real. She was born early, so she needs a little extra time to grow, but she's strong." "Can I touch her?" Adrian glanced at the nurse, who nodded. He guided Lucy's hand through the bassinet opening, helping her gently touch Hope's tiny fingers. The baby stirred at the contact, her hand reflexively gripping Lucy's finger. "She's holding my hand," Lucy's voice filled with wonder. "She knows I'm her sister. I think she does." Lucy stood there for a long time, just holding Hope's hand and talking to her in a soft voice about all the things they'd do together when she got bigger. She told her about their apartment and Mrs. Chen's cookies and the park with the good swings. She promised to teach her how to read and tie her shoes and deal with mean kids at school. "And I'll protect you," Lucy said seriously. "That's what big sisters do. We protect the little ones." Adrian felt tears burn his eyes. This was his family. These two girls, born to different mothers, but connected by love and choice, and the promise he'd made to always stay. By afternoon, Elena was cleared to move. They wheeled her down to the NICU in a wheelchair, Victoria pushing despite the nurse's protest that it was against policy. The moment Elena saw Hope through the clear bassinet walls, she dissolved into tears. "Can I hold her?" she asked desperately. "Of course." Patricia helped lift Hope carefully, trailing wires and monitors, and settled her into Elena's arms. Elena cradled her daughter like she was made of glass, staring at her face with an expression of pure awe. "Hi, baby girl. Hi, Hope. I'm here. Mama's here." Hope opened her eyes at the sound of Elena's voice, her unfocused gaze trying to find the source. Elena traced her daughter's tiny features with shaking fingers, the shell-pink ears, the delicate nose, the rosebud mouth. "She's perfect," Elena whispered. "How is she so perfect?" "She takes after her mother," Adrian said. Elena looked up at him, and something passed between them that felt like the world shifting into place. Victoria, watching from the corner, smiled knowingly and took Lucy's hand. "Why don't we go find some truly terrible hospital cafeteria food?" Victoria suggested. "Give Mom and Dad some time alone." "But I want to stay with Hope," Lucy protested. "She'll be here when we get back. I promise. Besides, I heard they have chocolate pudding." Lucy allowed herself to be led away, and Adrian pulled his chair closer to Elena's wheelchair. Together they sat in the quiet of the NICU, watching their daughter sleep. I was so afraid, Elena said quietly. From the moment I found out I was pregnant until they placed her in my arms, I was terrified she'd be taken from me, that I'd lose her like I lost the first one. But you didn't. She's here. She's alive. She is. Elena's voice cracked. And now, I'm terrified of everything else, of not being a good enough mother, of failing her, of this whole impossible situation falling apart. Adrian took her free hand. Elena, look at her. Really look. She's breathing. She's healthy. She exists because of a drunken night that should have been a mistake but somehow turned into the most important thing in both our lives. If we can create something this miraculous from chaos, we can handle whatever comes next. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple. It's the hardest thing we'll ever do, but we're doing it together, and that makes all the difference. Elena leaned her head against his shoulder, careful not to disturb Hope. When did this happen? When did you become the person I can't imagine my life without? Probably around the same time you became that person for me. They sat like that until Hope woke, demanding to be fed, and Elena fumbled through her first attempt at nursing with Adrian's steady encouragement and a lactation consultant's patient guidance. It was messy and awkward and absolutely perfect. The days in the NICU developed a rhythm. Adrian and Elena took shifts, one staying with Hope while the other rested or dealt with the outside world. Lucy visited every day after school, reading to her baby sister from picture books and telling her elaborate stories about their future adventures. Victoria appeared with startling regularity, always bearing gifts, blankets softer than clouds, tiny outfits that cost more than Adrian's monthly salary, a custom mobile for the bassinet that played Brahms. You're spoiling her, Elena had protested weakly. That's what grandmothers do, Victoria replied, adjusting Hope's blanket with surprising tenderness. I have 30 years of grandmother duties to make up for. Let me spoil her. On Hope's fourth day in the NICU, she passed all her tests with flying colors. Her temperature regulated perfectly, she was nursing well, and her weight was trending upward. Dr. Martinez declared her ready to go home, pending one final exam. Home, Elena repeated, looking panicked. I don't have a home ready for a baby. The nursery's half finished. I don't have enough clothes or bottles or... You have everything you need, Adrian interrupted gently. And whatever you don't have, we'll figure out. But where is home? Your apartment? Mine? Do we trade off? How does this work? It was the question they'd been avoiding for months, dancing around the logistics of co-parenting when they lived in different worlds. Adrian took a breath, knowing what he was about to suggest was crazy. Move in with me. Elena stared at him. What? Move in with me and Lucy. My apartment's small, but we'll make it work. We're already a family. We might as well live like one. Adrian, I have a penthouse. You have a 2-bedroom apartment in a building with questionable plumbing. So we'll look for something bigger, something that works for all of us. Adrian gripped her hands. I don't care where we live. I just know I don't want to spend half my time away from Hope or have her shuttling between 2 homes, never knowing where she belongs. She deserves better than that. We all do. Elena's eyes filled with tears. Are you sure? This is a huge commitment. I've been committed since the moment I promised not to disappear. I'm just making it official. What about Lucy? Have you asked her? I don't have to. She's been planning what color to paint the room she'll share with Hope for weeks. She's already all in. Elena laughed shakily. This is crazy. Completely. Do you want to do it anyway? She looked at Hope sleeping in the bassinet, then at Adrian, then back to their daughter. Yes, I want to do it anyway. They brought Hope home 3 days later to Adrian's apartment, which had been transformed by an invasion of Victoria's efficiency and Mrs. Chen's practical wisdom. The living room held a bassinet, a changing table, and enough baby supplies to stock a small store. Lucy's room had been rearranged to accommodate a crib already assembled and waiting. This is temporary, Adrian explained to Elena as she looked around the cramped space with wide eyes, until we find something bigger. It's perfect, Elena said, and meant it, because it wasn't about the space or the amenities. It was about the photos of Sarah on the walls, the crayon drawings Lucy had made welcoming her baby sister, the sense that people actually lived here. It was everything her pristine penthouse had never been. It was a home. The first few weeks were a beautiful disaster. Hope woke every 2 hours demanding to be fed, her cries piercing the thin walls and probably waking half the building. Adrian and Elena stumbled through diaper changes and spit up and the peculiar terror of bathing something so impossibly small. Lucy helped where she could, fetching diapers and singing lullabies she remembered from when Sarah used to sing to her. Elena moved through it all in an exhausted daze, marveling at how quickly her carefully ordered life had devolved into chaos. She'd taken a leave from Vaughn Industries, something she'd sworn she'd never do, and found she didn't miss it as much as she'd expected. The conference calls and board meetings felt distant and unimportant compared to the weight of hope in her arms. "I don't recognize myself anymore," she confessed to Adrian one night at 3 a.m, both of them zombie walking through another feeding. "6 months ago, I was a CEO who worked 80-hour weeks and measured success in stock prices. Now I'm covered in spit up, and I haven't worn anything without an elastic waistband in a month, and I've never been happier." "That's called being a parent," Adrian said, expertly burping Hope over his shoulder. "It ruins you for everything else." "Good. I don't want to be who I was before. That person was lonely. And now? Now I have more family than I know what to do with." Elena gestured around the cramped apartment where Lucy slept in the next room, where Victoria had left another care package by the door, where Adrian stood holding their daughter in the dim light. "It's overwhelming and exhausting and absolutely perfect." Adrian leaned over and kissed her, soft and sweet, tasting of coffee and exhaustion and home. "I love you," he said simply. Elena's breath caught. They hadn't said it yet, had been dancing around the words for weeks. "I love you too. I think I have for a while." "Since when?" "Since you stood up to my mother and refused to be bought. Or maybe since the first ultrasound when you looked at our daughter like she was already the most important thing in the world, or possibly that night in the bar when you were just a stranger who made me feel less alone." She smiled. "It's hard to pinpoint exactly when you became my person. I'll take any of those moments, as long as I get to keep being your person." Hope chose that moment to spit up all over Adrian's shirt, and they both laughed until tears ran down their faces, giddy with sleep deprivation and love. By March, they'd found a house. Not a penthouse or a mansion, but a modest 3-bedroom in a neighborhood with good schools and a yard big enough for a swing set. It needed work. The kitchen was outdated, the master bathroom had questionable tile, and the backyard was mostly weeds, but it had potential. More importantly, it had enough room for their growing family without feeling cold or impersonal. Victoria had offered to buy them something bigger, but both Adrian and Elena had refused. This was something they wanted to do themselves, to build from their own choices and efforts. They used Elena's savings for the down payment and Adrian's steady income for the mortgage, and it felt right, equal, like they were actually in this together. Moving day was controlled chaos. Mrs. Chen directed an army of movers while Lucy ran from room to room claiming spaces. Victoria arrived with interior designers who'd clearly been given strict instructions to make the house beautiful but livable. And through it all, Hope slept peacefully in her carrier, oblivious to the upheaval happening around her. "This is ours," Elena said that night, standing in the empty living room after everyone had left. Boxes surrounded them, overwhelming in their quantity. "A house that belongs to all of us." "Terrifying, isn't it?" Adrian slipped his arms around her waist from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Absolutely terrifying, also wonderful." Lucy appeared in her pajamas, Hope cradled carefully in her arms. "The baby's awake. I think she wants Mama." Elena took Hope and settled onto the one piece of furniture they'd assembled, a rocking chair positioned by the window. She nursed their daughter while Lucy curled up against Adrian on the floor, and they sat together in their new home, exhausted and happy and more complete than any of them had dared hope. Over the following months, the house transformed from empty shell to home. Adrian painted Lucy's room purple at her insistence and covered one wall with her artwork. Hope's nursery became a cheerful yellow space filled with books and soft toys. The master bedroom stayed simple, but Elena insisted on good mattresses because, as she pointed out, if they were going to be sleep-deprived parents, they deserved comfort when they actually got to sleep. Elena returned to Vaughn Industries in May, but on drastically different terms. She worked from home 3 days a week, went into the office only when absolutely necessary, and left every meeting by 5 to be home for dinner. The board had protested until she'd made it clear that these were non-negotiable terms. She was still CEO, but she was a mother first. The shift changed her. The ruthless executive who'd built an empire became someone who understood that success meant different things at different times. Vaughn Industries continued thriving under her leadership, but Elena stopped measuring her worth by quarterly earnings. She measured it in Hope's first smile, Lucy's school achievements, and the quiet moments with Adrian that made everything else feel secondary. Adrian continued working at Vaughn Industries, though he'd been promoted twice since Hope's birth, partially because he was genuinely good at his job, but also because Elena had made it clear to the board that talent should be recognized regardless of personal relationships. He worked hard, came home tired, and fell into bed each night beside the woman he loved, grateful for the strange path that had led him here. Lucy bloomed in her role as big sister. She was fiercely protective of Hope, read to her constantly, and appointed herself the baby's official entertainment director. On Hope's first birthday, Lucy gave a speech about how being a big sister was her favorite job in the world, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Victoria became a fixture in their lives in ways none of them had anticipated. She babysat regularly, taught Lucy to play piano, and showed up for every milestone with elaborate gifts and rare, genuine smiles. She'd even started dating again, bringing a kind professor to family dinners and blushing like a teenager when he held her hand. "You've changed her," Elena told Adrian one evening. "Somehow you made my Ice Queen mother into an actual human with feelings." "I think Hope did that. And you. Letting her back in gave her a second chance. We all got second chances." Elena looked at their daughters playing in the backyard, Lucy pushing Hope on a toddler swing while Victoria supervised with unnecessary concern. That's what this whole crazy story has been about. Second chances at family, at love, at getting it right this time. Adrian pulled her close, watching their life unfold in the golden evening light. "Do you ever regret it? That night at the bar? The way everything happened?" Elena was quiet for a moment, considering. "I regret the pain, the fear, the complications, but the result?" She gestured to their daughters, to the home they'd built, to the life they'd created from chaos. "How could I regret something that brought me everything I never knew I needed?" "That's not an answer." "Yes, it is." She turned to face him fully. "That night was the beginning of my life actually starting. Everything before was just preparation. Everything after has been real." Adrian kissed her, deep and sure, and thought about the terrified woman in the hospital office who told him she was pregnant, how far they'd both come from that moment, how much they'd built from fear and uncertainty and the stubborn refusal to run. "I love you," he said against her lips. "I love you too, even though you ruined my perfectly organized life. You love that I ruined your perfectly organized life." "Maybe a little bit." They stood together on their back porch, watching their daughters play, and Adrian thought about his father, the man who'd walked away when Adrian was 12, leaving wounds that had taken decades to heal. He'd spent his whole life terrified of becoming that man, of abandoning someone who needed him. But standing here now, he realized he'd become someone completely different. He'd become the man who stayed, the father who showed up, the partner who chose love, even when it was hard. Hope toddled over on unsteady legs, Lucy hovering protectively behind her. "Dada," she babbled, reaching up with chubby hands. Adrian scooped her up, breathing in the baby shampoo smell of her hair. "Hey, sweet girl, having fun?" "Swing," Hope declared. It was her favorite word tied with Cookie and Lucy. "More swinging? You're going to wear your sister out." Lucy appeared at his side, slightly sweaty, but grinning. "I don't mind. She's really good at swinging now. She holds on tight and everything." "You're an excellent teacher." "I know." Lucy beamed with pride. Then, more quietly, "Daddy? Is Elena going to be my mom now? Like my real mom?" The question hung in the air. Elena had stopped in the doorway, clearly hearing, and Adrian saw vulnerability flash across her face. "What do you think?" Adrian asked Lucy carefully. "What do you want?" Lucy chewed her lip, thinking hard. "I want her to be. I already call Victoria Grandma, and Hope's my sister for real. So it makes sense that Elena's my mom too, if that's okay. I mean, I still love my first mom. I'll always love her, but I think I can love Elena too. Is that allowed?" Elena made a small sound, her hand covering her mouth. Adrian's throat tightened. That's definitely allowed, Bug. Love doesn't run out. You can love as many people as you want. Okay, then I want to call her mom, if she wants me to. Elena crossed the porch in 3 steps and knelt down to Lucy's level. I would be honored if you called me mom. More honored than anything in the world. Lucy threw her arms around Elena's neck, and Elena hugged her back fiercely, tears streaming down her face. I promise I'll be a good mom, Elena whispered. I promise I'll try my hardest. You already are, Lucy said simply. You're here. That's all that matters. Adrian watched his family come together. His 2 daughters, the woman he loved, and in the distance, Victoria pretending not to cry while photographing the moment on her phone, and felt complete in a way he'd never experienced before. This was what he'd been searching for his whole life without knowing it. Not perfection, not ease. Just people who chose each other every day, who stayed even when things got hard, who built something real from the messy pieces of their broken parts. That night, after both girls were asleep, Adrian and Elena sat together on their bed, exhausted but content. Elena's head rested on his shoulder, her hand intertwined with his. Do you remember what you asked me? Elena said quietly. That night at the bar, you asked what I was hiding from. I remember. You said everything. I was hiding from hope. She lifted her head to look at him. I'd lost so much. My marriage, my first baby, any chance at a normal life. That hoping for something better felt dangerous, easier to just work and achieve, and never let myself want anything I couldn't control. And now? Now I'm drowning in hope. I have a daughter named for it, a family built on it, a future full of it. Her voice caught. You gave that to me. By refusing to run. By staying even when I gave you every reason to go. You taught me that hope isn't dangerous. It's the only thing worth having. Adrian cupped her face in his hands. You gave me hope too. Hope that I could be more than just a man surviving. That I could build something new without betraying what I'd lost. That loving again didn't mean forgetting Sarah. It just meant my heart was big enough for both. We're quite the pair. The best kind of disaster. Elena laughed, the sound free and unguarded. I love you, Adrian Brooks. I love your stubbornness and your loyalty, and your refusal to let me push you away even when I tried. I love you, Elena Vaughn. I love your strength and your vulnerability, and the way you've learned to let people in even though it terrifies you. They kissed in the quiet of their bedroom, in the house they'd chosen together, with their daughters sleeping down the hall and a future stretching out before them that was uncertain but no longer frightening, because they'd face it together, whatever came, the good days and the hard ones, the triumphs and the failures, all of it. The months turned into years and their story continued unfolding in the small moments that made up a life. Hope's first words and first steps, Lucy's middle school graduation, family dinners that always ran late because everyone had too much to say. Adrian teaching both girls to ride bikes in the park where he'd once walked alone with his grief. Elena reading bedtime stories in voices that made the girls laugh until their sides hurt. Victoria hosting elaborate holiday gatherings where her professor boyfriend proposed in front of everyone, and she actually said yes. They had struggles too, sleepless nights and work stress, and the normal friction of people learning to live together. Hope inherited Elena's stubbornness and Adrian's tendency to overthink everything. Lucy navigated the complicated emotions of having 2 mothers in her heart. Elena and Adrian argued about money and parenting strategies and whose turn it was to handle the 2 a.m. feeding. But they worked through it, because that's what families did. They showed up, they compromised, they chose each other even when it was hard. On a warm evening in late spring, 5 years after that fateful night in the bar, Adrian found Elena sitting on their back porch watching Hope and Lucy play in the yard. The girls were older now, Lucy 13 and gangling, Hope a spirited 5-year-old with her mother's dark eyes and her father's easy smile. What are you thinking about? Adrian asked, settling beside her on the porch swing. That night, at the gala, when I hid in a bar because I couldn't face pretending to have all the answers. Seems like a lifetime ago. It was. I was a completely different person. Elena leaned her head on his shoulder. If someone had told me then that the stranger I met in that bar would become my family, I would have thought they were crazy. Would you change it? If you could go back? Elena was quiet for a long moment, watching their daughters play. Lucy was teaching Hope to do cartwheels, both of them tumbling across the grass with more enthusiasm than skill. Their laughter carried on the evening breeze, pure and joyful. "Not a single thing," Elena said finally, "because that one reckless night led to this. To you. To our girls. To a life I never knew I wanted but can't imagine living without. Even the hard parts? Especially the hard parts. They made us who we are." She turned to look at him fully. "You once told me that showing up was all that mattered, that being there was the most important thing. I didn't believe you at first, but you were right." Adrian kissed her temple. "We showed up for each other. That's what made this work. We showed up for ourselves too. That's the part I'm most proud of. We could have run, could have hidden, could have let fear make us small. But we didn't. We chose hope instead." Hope chose that moment to come running up to the porch, grass-stained and beaming. "Mama, Daddy, watch! Lucy taught me how to do a cartwheel." She proceeded to demonstrate with such enthusiasm that she ended up in a heap on the ground, but she bounced up laughing, completely unbothered by the failed attempt. "That was beautiful, sweet girl," Elena said, gathering Hope into her lap. "Very impressive. I'm going to practice every day until I'm perfect. Lucy says practice makes perfect, right, Lucy?" Lucy jogged over, slightly winded. "That's what Mom taught me. Both moms, actually." It still made Adrian's heart swell every time Lucy called Elena Mom without hesitation or qualification. Just Mom, like it had always been that way. "Can we have a camp out in the backyard tonight?" Hope asked, bouncing with excitement. "Please, please, please." "Lucy said we could, if you said yes." Adrian looked at Elena, who smiled and shrugged. "Why not? It's Friday. No school tomorrow." "Yes!" Hope scrambled down and grabbed Lucy's hand. "Come on! We have to get our sleeping bags." The girls raced into the house, and quiet settled over the porch. In the distance, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. "A backyard campout," Adrian mused. "Remember when our biggest concern was whether we'd survive the first month? Now our biggest concern is finding the flashlights and making sure they don't eat too much candy." Progress. They sat together as evening deepened into night, eventually joining the girls in a tent cobbled together from bed sheets and lawn chairs. They told stories and ate s'mores that were more burnt than toasted and looked up at the stars emerging one by one in the darkening sky. "Make a wish," Lucy said, pointing at the first star. "Everyone make a wish." Adrian closed his eyes and wished for more nights like this, more ordinary moments that felt extraordinary because they were shared, more years with the family he'd built from broken pieces and stubborn hope. When he opened his eyes, he found Elena watching him, and he knew without asking that she'd wished for the same thing. Hope fell asleep first, curled against Elena's side. Lucy lasted another hour, fighting sleep like it was her mortal enemy before finally surrendering. Adrian and Elena lay on either side of their daughters, the night quiet except for crickets and distant traffic. "Adrian?" Elena whispered. "Yeah?" "Thank you." "For what?" "For being the man who stayed. For teaching me that people can choose to stay even when it's hard. For showing me what family actually means." Adrian reached across the sleeping girls to take her hand. "Thank you for taking a chance on a stranger in a bar, for letting me into your life even though you were terrified, for being brave enough to hope." "We were both brave." "Yeah, we were." They fell asleep like that, hands linked across their daughters, in a backyard tent under a sky full of stars. And Adrian thought about the promise he'd made in Elena's office all those years ago, that he wouldn't disappear, that he'd stay. He'd kept that promise. Through fear and doubt and every obstacle life had thrown at them, he'd stayed. They both had. And in staying, they'd found something neither of them had been looking for but both desperately needed. They'd found home, not a place, but a feeling. The certainty that whatever came next, they'd face it together. The baby they'd never planned became the daughter they couldn't imagine life without. The one night that should have been a mistake became the beginning of everything that mattered. And two people who'd hidden from hope learned to build their entire lives on it. Years later, when Hope asked about how Mommy and Daddy met, they told her the truth. That sometimes the best things in life start with mistakes. That family isn't just about biology, it's about choice. That love means showing up, especially when it's hard. And on a quiet evening, when both girls were asleep and the house was still, Adrian and Elena sat together in the home they'd built, surrounded by the evidence of their life. Lucy's science fair awards, Hope's crayon masterpieces, photos documenting every moment they'd fought to create, and felt grateful. Grateful for a chance encounter in a dark bar, for the courage to stay when everything said to run, for the family that grew from chaos and became their entire world. The night may have begun as a mistake, but the family they built from it was the most right thing either of them had ever done, and that made every difficult moment worth it, every tear, every fear, every leap of faith, because in the end, they'd found what everyone searches for, a place to belong, people who chose them every day, a love that stayed, and that was everything.